IB Nation, welcome back to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. We are here for Notre Dame Recruiting Hour. In our new time slots, usually we were Mondays at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. We have now flipped the mailbag episode. If you didn't hear that announcement earlier this week, we flipped the mailbag episode, which usually happens on Fridays, and the Recruiting Hour podcast that happens on Mondays. So you're just flipping it. We're starting the weekend out with out with a mailbag each and every week. And then we're going to end it with the recruiting talk. And I really actually prefer it this way, to be honest with you, because it gives me an opportunity and our staff an opportunity to highlight where players will be this week, what big visitors Notre Dame is look at, might be on campus when they have a home game, and just some kind of the latest recruiting intel. So I think this is going to be a really cool format. Today, we are going to talk about safety recruiting. If you all have missed it earlier this week, Davis Andrews, 2024 safety out of American Fork in the state of Utah. You could also consider him a 2026 kid because he's going to take it more of a mission, but he chose the University of Utah over Notre Dame for various reasons. We'll hit on them a little bit during this show. And I want to talk about, is that it for safety recruiting in 2024? And hit mostly on why 2025 is a make or break class for Chris O'Leary for the Notre Dame program. Also going to hit on where some Notre Dame top targets in the 2025 class and even a 2026 kid will be this weekend. So even when Notre Dame doesn't have a home game, obviously they are away at Louisville this weekend, there are still some recruits to keep track of. Where are guys going? Because we know here in the recruiting world, actions always speak louder than words. So where are kids spending their time, spending their money, spending their family's money to go visit each and every week? So we'll hit on that. And then, of course, a mailbag at the end. So make sure at any point in this podcast, if this is the first time with us, MB before the question to designate what is a mailbag and what is just general chatter in the chat. Very much appreciate all mailbag questions, and we'll hit as many as we possibly can today. Want to start us off, though. Breaking news. Ryan Roberts hates doing solo shows. Did you all know this? I'm here to tell you guys that Ryan does not love solo shows. So I decided, what better person to get back on than my old partner in crime, who's now feeling a whole lot better after battling a little bit of a sickness. Got Mr. Sean Davis, the co-host of the Lucky Lefty podcast, joining us today. You all on this channel should be very familiar with Sean. Of course, he used to be my co-host on this show. Wanted to start getting him back more and more. Sean, this is a little bit of a reunion today, man, but I'm excited to have you back on, talking some safeties, doing some mailbag. How's everything going, brother?
Hey, I'm feeling great, man. Ready to get back to it. Recruiting hour. Back, feeling comfortable. I saw the outline when you sent it to me, and I said, oh, man, this is a subject we really need to dig in on.
It really is. It really is, Sean.
Okay,
and that's honestly what. Yes.
Just generally.
Okay.
The safety position.
Yes.
Probably the least amount of elite players in most recruiting classes are probably at the safety position.
I would say that there has been a devaluation of safety recently. Yeah, I would say that. I mean, there's always the impact guys, like you're always going to see those, but I think you're seeing a higher level of those types of athletes play corner, for instance, and then a lot of the bigger safeties now are getting moved up to the second level a lot. So
absolutely.
I definitely don't think it's as prevalent as maybe once it was, right? Which is why I personally think it's important for Notre Dame to get a couple of those big names in safety class, right? If there's not as many big names, let's get the talent that's out there, right? So I'm excited, Sean, to have you back for this one, especially because I was going to do the whole talk about safety recruiting and give my perspective, but I actually think like this is a bigger conversation than just 2025 safety recruiting. Like, let's talk about the entirety of the safety position at Notre Dame. Let's talk about how important this is moving forward, because 2024 was really important too for safety recruiting, and it ended up being okay, but there were a million misses, and it could have been better. It could have been a whole lot better. So, I mean, Sean, I think a good way to start here is obviously the recent news on Tuesday nights Davis Andrews chose Utah over Notre Dame. And
Hmm.
the various reasons, and I highlighted this on the message board. I don't blame Notre Dame for this one. I don't. Because one, he's technically a 2026 kid because he's not going to be here until he's done his LDS mission, right? So, but I didn't blame Notre Dame for this one because in the end, I think the separators for Utah over Notre Dame were the religious aspect because he's Mormon, the religious
Right.
aspect, and then the
Yeah.
comfort in knowing how to navigate the mission process, and especially the mission process from going on the mission, returning to
Yeah.
football, and then student life. Like that stuff was a big separator for him. And I think
Yeah.
also he's a Utah kid. He knows the Utah Utes. He knows Kyle Whittingham. I think the comfort of being closer to home was also a little bit of a help and boost for Utah. But I mean, it's a loss. But I just want to let people know that like this isn't going to change anything with 2024 recruiting. Like Notre Dame's done at safety in 2024 class unless someone just pops up and is just like, "Hey, I want to come to Notre Dame," and makes that type of push. But they have Bronte Johnson, who I think is an absolute star in the 2024 class potentially if he's developed properly. Tabron Benny Powell out of Lakota West in the state of Ohio. He's having a really nice senior year as of right now. And then also you have why am I blanking? You have Kennedy Urlacher, obviously out of the state of Arizona, Chandler High School as well. So it's still a good safety class, but it could have been a whole lot better. And Sean, I don't know, man, just for my scope, that's I think where we need to start this conversation because we'll get into the 2025 kids and where things are and some of the recruiting intel that people went out here, a little bit of that. But safety recruiting is a problem at Notre Dame right now.
Yeah.
We're still getting talent, but you're not getting the talent you should enough, in my opinion. Like they're just missing on a lot of guys. And it's been a little bit frustrating, to be honest, over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Davis Andrews, the new truck leasing situation might have taken everything over the top out there for him, Brian. Knowing he was going to get a flatbed truck by being a scholarship player for Utah. But no, seriously, his recruitment was very interesting because you knew he was going to go on a mission.
Yep.
Getting him on the roster in 26, would it even be worth it? Is a question that you would have to ask. We were talking before the show just with the 24 class and doing shows earlier in the year and talking about some of the safeties that Notre Dame was in on. And we were super excited. Like, oh man, seems like Notre Dame has a shot at this guy, that guy. And slowly but surely, you see guys coming off the table. And the question that I have is as we look at Chris O'Leary and his recruiting,
Yep.
is it because there have been some strange situations where Notre Dame thought they had guys in the 24 class and then something out of the ordinary happens and it
Well,
goes
Sean,
the other way.
this extends even back to like 2022 because 2022 you missed out the Xavier Nwankpa situation that we talked about.
Absolutely.
2023, I don't fully blame him for losing Peyton Bowen, but like he still did lose Peyton Bowen at the end of the day. He lost Peyton Bowen.
Yeah.
And then I definitely don't hold him responsible for the Brandon Hillman situation with that whole thing after he signed his letter of intent.
Yeah.
Regardless, you wanted four guys. You had four really good players in the 2024 class, and two of them didn't end up playing at Notre Dame. I mean, and that does count at some day. And I think you make a great point about 2024. There's a lot of misses, man. And I'm sorry to cut you off because, like we were talking before this show, it's like Jalen McClain was a miss. DeJuan Lane was a miss. I mean, there were so many guys. DeMello Jones was a miss. I mean, there were just so many guys, man, that you look at and just say, Notre Dame has to be able to close on those guys. They have to, and they didn't in 2024. They didn't.
And with that, you asked the question, is it more Notre Dame? Is it the coach? What is it, right? You thought maybe Kyle Hamilton would help to start change the narrative at the position. You thought maybe his relationship with his cousin will give Notre Dame a really good shot at landing Peyton Woodward, and then he goes to Georgia and ends up at Alabama.
Yeah.
And now we're just looking around saying, okay, what needs to break for Notre Dame to start acquiring the talent?
Yep.
Because you have kids like a Don Schuler, you have developmental kids, and maybe see an Iowa program every now and then they'll get basically they lucked up and got Xavier and Wonka. Going back to what you were talking about, he fell in their laps. Like at the last minute, like, oh yeah, we'll take you. He's a kid from Iowa, but at a certain time, he was a heavy lean in a lot of people's opinions to Notre Dame. But Iowa's program has developed so many good safeties and cornerbacks
Yes.
and gotten them to the NFL that weren't highly touted, that's their thing. Now with Notre Dame, I don't know, are we a developmental program at safety or are
Yeah.
we a recruiting program at safety? At some point, you have to come up with an identity, right? Because it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like we're doing either
Yep.
right now.
Well, LaShawn, think about how frustrating it is on this defense this year, because I know we've talked about this a ton, but Notre Dame's defense has been very good in 2023 so far. I mean, you're averaging to go up 13 points a game. You only gave up 17 points to Ohio State. You only gave up 14 points to Duke, who was number 17 team in the country at the time. I mean,
Yeah.
you have played really good defense despite not having great safety play this year. I mean, Xavier Watts has had a couple nice games, but there's been a couple games where he's a little bit invisible, right?
Mhm.
And then we've seen the struggles of, DJ Brown had a great game against NC State, but like then we see the shortcomings that he has against Ohio State, for instance. And you see the shortcomings Ramon Henderson has. And man, some guys can't even get on like Antoine Carter can barely get on the field as of right now. So the president of Notre Dame's safety is not where it needs to be. Just isn't. It needs to get better. It needs to be more impactful. And the easiest way to make it more impactful is, of course, coaching, of course, developing, but to get talent in that room, right?
Yeah.
Like Chris O'Leary can be I think Chris O'Leary is a pretty good coach, to be honest, but Chris O'Leary can be the greatest coach of all time. But if he doesn't have talent in that room, there's only so good you can be. You're putting a cap on how good your team, your position could be if you don't get great talent in the room. And I like Adon Schuler. I think Adon's going to be a good player at Notre Dame. I like Ben Minnick. I think he's talented.
Yeah.
But are either one of those guys difference makers per se? Like, are they? I don't expect anybody to be a Kyle Hamilton, but are they something even close to that, where it's like the opposing offense needs a game plan to get around that guy? It's not just a monotonous, like, we do our job, we'll win against Notre Dame safety. It's like you saw Kyle Hamilton play. You're like, we need to do this, this, and this to make sure that kid doesn't kill us. Like, he was a killer. And Notre Dame right now, I just don't think they have. I don't think they have enough guys right now that are like those types, the developmental high upside players, or even the players that have high floors that they can come in immediately and just like play good ball. Like, I don't think they have enough of these on either side. So it at some point, there's a breaking point that needs to happen, in my opinion, with Chris O'Leary. Because I think that Chris O'Leary's done a pretty good job as a developer on the field. But college football, and if you want the mailbag, tune in on Mondays. It's very simple. See in the chat. If you want the mailbag, go. It's on Monday. It's on Mondays now. But for me, Sean, it's like college football is based on recruiting, coaching, and recruiting. Those things need to be synonymous in college football, right? So you have now struck out 2022. 2023, you got two good players when you should have had more good players and one especially high upside player, or two high upside players, I should say. And then 2024, I think you get a good 3-man class with one high upside kid in Bronte Johnson. I think that's what you have right now. But moving forward, there's just excuses are running out, right? It's like Chris O'Leary is a young guy. He's just figuring out the recruiting thing. Cool. That's fine. But like, that doesn't last 4 years. You know what I mean? Like, that's like a second year thing. Honestly, 2024, I feel like we could pick apart a little bit more because it's like year 3 now, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but I really think for me, 2025 is the make it or break it class, especially Sean, because we talked about this before the show. Notre Dame's in a really good spot with several top 2025 safeties in the class.
Yeah.
And that's why it's frustrating that, I mean, I think it's going to be a good, like, just data set in 2025 of like, we're in a great spot with these guys. How many do we close on? Do we close on any? Do we close on all? What's our premier class? 2025, I think, is going to tell us a lot about Chris O'Leary as far as how good of a college recruiter that he can be.
And with that, you talked about it early in the show, just the evaluation and the evaluation of the position comes into play. Like, you identify the top kids, but even with that, maybe the net needs to be cast a little bit wider earlier, right? Because you might have 5 kids that you lock in on, and if all 5 of those kids are the top kids, you're battling top programs. So now you have to like play the percentages and ask yourself, okay, read the room, know very early how close you are with this particular kid or that particular kid. Be honest with yourself and say, okay, I feel really good that I can get this kid to come to Notre Dame. This kid, it's going to be a battle to probably go into the summer, maybe into the fall. And you have an honest evaluation. But then on top of that, I think there are some people that play cornerback in high school that you have to look at film and say, yo, he might be a really good safety for us. Like the evaluation has to
Yeah.
go and spread out a little bit different than it was 10 years ago when you're just watching film on guys that strictly play the safety position because things have
Right.
changed. You have to look at kids, they play nickel in high school and do
Yep.
things like that. We've seen it with what Al Golden has put out on the field. Hey, he likes to have 3 safeties or the safety to be the nickel back to be someone that can play safety as well, and Thomas Harper or Carter,
That that's
and
um
that's the
that,
way
that that's
things are
some
going.
That's some Gary Patterson stuff, Sean. Gary
Absolutely.
Patterson, he was the godfather of 4-2-5. They used to run a lot of umbrella coverage where those two outside safeties could either roll down or play high. And I think that that's an
Mhm.
interchangeableness, which is really cool. Like I'm sorry, I geek out with that type of stuff, man. I used to love Gary Patterson's
No, you
4-2-5 back in
should
the
geek
day.
out. And that's
Yeah.
why one of the biggest off-season thoughts we had or conversations we had was, yo, what's going to happen with Clarence Lewis? Does he become that guy? Does he become that new safety or does he become the nickel safety guy? And, you know, he's been used sparingly at times
Yes.
on the
Yes.
inside, but that goes back to what we've been talking about. And look, I will say this. Um, there were a lot of good things said about Ben Minnick
Mhm.
during the spring,
Yep.
as far as being a guy that knows how to play the position. And his counterpart that he played with in high school, probably allowed him to be able to do a lot of great things and make some plays. When you play with another great player, it helps you with your development and your knowledge of what to do playing off of him. And I think he was ready, had to deal with some injuries and, just get stronger and get used to being in college, all of that stuff. But you have him and a Don Schuler. For me,
Yep.
before we get to the recruiting class in 25, I
Yep.
need to see what you're going to do with that, what you have in that freshman room at the
That's true.
position, because there's ability there.
There is.
There's ability there. Now we've seen Xavier Watts improve, in my opinion. Ramon Henderson, all right, he still struggles in space a little bit. And then I know everybody still wants to kill DJ Brown for the drop pass, the drop interception, but honestly, DJ Brown was having one of his best years up to that
Man,
point.
that NC State game was the best game he's ever played by a landslide, man. It hasn't been all bad
And
from DJ. I agree.
nothing's going to change. He's going to be
Yeah.
athletically limited. That's
Yes.
that's just who he is. But he's
Which
played
means,
sound
Sean,
football.
which doesn't mean that he can't be a good football player. It just means
No.
that it's going to be a little bit up and down with him, right?
Yeah.
Because the margin
Yeah.
for error is smaller for DJ. So some games he'll look like NC State. Other
Yeah.
games he'll look like Ohio State's, right? Like it's so volatile as far as like when it's going to be a good DJ game, when it's going to be a bad DJ game. But I think that the malpractice of this staff is that DJ should have came back as a 6-year senior and been a rotational player. Why are we mad at DJ Brown for being the best of what they have? Like, what, you can't be mad at DJ. DJ didn't do anything wrong except play his butt off each and every day in practice. We understand that he
Yeah.
shouldn't be that guy, but
Yeah.
he has done everything that in his power to be that guy. And unfortunately, the staff has not acquired enough talent in the safety room to make it so you have 2 guys at safety that are legitimately good, really good football players, and then DJ's a key rotational piece. That should be how it is, but it isn't that way, unfortunately, partly because safety recruiting, partly.
Is it an approach? Because I think we judge Chris O'Leary by his merits, but then he's also compared to what Mike Mickens is doing. All right. So you see what Mike Mickens is doing, not just
Yeah.
only from a recruiting standpoint, but from a development standpoint and
Yep.
getting these guys ready to play. Then people look at Chris O'Leary in the safety position like, hey, okay, what's cracking? What's going on? Like, what's the problem? And I just wonder if it needs to be a change in approach and evaluation, or just, yo, he just might not be it. We might just have to face the fact that, hey, he just not, because he can't get it done from a developmental standpoint,
Yeah.
and we don't see it in the recruiting. So, but the names that they have in the 25 class, to be honest, you sent over there. I'm looking at the names and I'm saying to myself, okay, we saw top guys like this for the 24 class. Like,
Yes.
so what does it really mean at this point?
Right. It doesn't mean anything at this point, right? Because at the end of the day, you are judged as a recruiter based upon what your recruiting class is and who you close on. 100%. But Sean, I will say the one thing that is a little different than 2024, I thought that they were in a pretty good spot with a few guys in 2024, but I feel like in 2025 they're in even better shape with a couple of these guys. Like they're in some really good position, which is why I phrase it as a make it or break it year for Coach O'Leary on the recruiting trail, because he is in great early position. And I think that this is going to show, can he close when they are the number one team for its school? Because if a Notre Dame is a top 3 school for a safety, let's say, just hypothetical, I don't have a lot of confidence right now at safety that Notre Dame will be able to close on that kid. I don't. But I would say there are 2 to 3 guys right now today that Notre Dame is the leader for. I would say that very confidently. And now when you're the front runner, can you close at least in that situation? Because you need to be able to do that, right? So let's talk about 2025 kids. I think that I kind of broke this up into a couple different categories, Sean, and basically the first section of players are players that I feel like Notre Dame is in a really, really good spot for, right? Like a really good spot. And then after that, it's you guys in Notre Dame is still recruiting, and there's a level of interest on both sides, and we'll see what things happen or how things transpire over the next few months. I think it'll be a big telling point. But I want to start us off with one player that has a super interesting backstory, just really interesting. And so Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Mount Tabor safety, Jadon Blair, who is a 6'4", 180-pound safety. You heard that correct, friends. 6'4". So think Kyle Hamilton, size-wise. He's obviously not as thick as Kyle was during his Notre Dame career, but he's also only a junior in high school. Jadon Blair was a player, Sean, that I kind of posed it as this. Jadon Blair was intrigued by Notre Dame for several months, but I wouldn't say that he was necessarily interested in Notre Dame. You know, there's a clear difference there. You know, a guy intrigued is like, Notre Dame's calling. That's cool. That's interesting. I know a little bit about that school. Awesome. But then general interest is like, oh, I can see myself there. Like that's dope. Like that's really, really cool. That could be a fit for me.
Yeah.
And Jadon Blair visits this offseason, and I feel like as soon as he got on campus, him and his family, it was like, wow, this is unique and this is different. Because I've had Jadon Blair on this podcast. He is a very unique young man, very well spoken, very studious. He cares very high on about his education, unlike some kids. Like he really values that side of the coin. And he also values safety development. And the pitch that they've been giving to Jadon Blair the last few months is, you are Kyle Hamilton. Like you can be that type of player because size, like from a skill set perspective, not necessarily, 14th overall pick in the NFL draft when you come out, like nothing like that. But they have been very appealing to Jadon. And as soon as Jadon visited campus, I felt like everything just kind of just multiplied as far as the level of interest and legitimate interest. And then Sean, he came back for the Ohio State game. It was kind of a weird visit in some ways, and this isn't something that I'm going to put out in public, but maybe we'll talk about the message oil on this. But unfortunately, his stay got a little I don't even know how to phrase this correctly. Oh, we'll talk about this another time. But nothing between Notre Dame staff or Jadon Blair or the family. Like, they love Notre Dame. They had a great visit, tremendous. They continue to just push the needle with Jadon.
Yeah.
And I mean, Sean, like today, one, the Blair family and Jadon, I don't think are in any rush to make. I don't think they're in any rush to make a decision. This is more of a after season perspective type of thing. You know, they might want to take official visits and then make a decision that way. But Jadon Blair, if you ask me today, who would I say is the leader for him? I think it's Notre Dame. I don't think it's as clear as a couple other kids on this list that we'll talk about, but I think Notre Dame's in a great spot with Jadon Blair. I think that he's rated as the number 26 overall player on, I think, on On3 or 247, one of those. And this kid is the type of difference maker that I think Notre Dame needs more of in this class. So Jadon Blair, man, I don't know if you've seen like his film a ton yet, Sean.
I have. I've seen his film, and I love the kid.
Same.
I love the kid too. Look, excuse me from, a lot of people in Notre Dame's fan base say they suffer from BK PTSD. And I guess it's kind of the same in recruiting at the safety position. Right? You just become a pessimist about the position because of the way things have played out recently. I remember watching this film. I actually saw him. I was at the game with Malik, the Ohio State game, so I actually saw him. And I was like, "Yo, he's a little bit more. He's a little bit more impressive in person than I thought he would be." And I'm like,
he looks like a basketball player, doesn't he, man? He looks like a two guard.
I'm like, okay. And so I watched this film. I fell in love with this film. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. But if you look at the list of, the fact that he's considering Duke, schools like that, he comes from a family that is very serious about the academics. The fact that his family fell in love with Notre Dame. I don't know too many parents that don't come to Notre Dame and fall in love with Notre Dame. Yes. So what are the other aspects we have to worry about, right? What's being shown on TV? Can they see themselves making plays in your defense? I think we said the most pivotal thing for the recruitment of Deuce at the quarterback would be watching Sam Hartman. How is Sam Hartman playing in this offense? And I think the explosive offense that Notre Dame had early was very appealing to a Deuce Knight to say, oh, I can see myself in an offense like that. It's things like that. So what are we seeing? We're seeing Xavier Watts pick off Riley Leonard, right? A quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over. We're seeing Al Golden confuse quarterbacks like Riley Leonard and maybe Jack Plummer this weekend to give safety recruits an opportunity to see themselves and say, man, okay, now I can see myself in this defense. And then you close the deal by, guess what? Getting to a college football playoff, winning a playoff game, winning 11 games, winning a big game like the opportunity you had against Ohio State, right? That's a huge opportunity to change the recruiting narrative. Okay, they failed at it. Close, but no cigars. You get another great opportunity against Caleb Williams and USC coming up to change the narrative. There are a lot of things that go into closing the deal for kids like this. And when you get the opportunities, it sounds as simple as the position coach, but it's much bigger than that. It really is much bigger than that because you're selling the parents, you're selling the young man. Marcus Freeman has to sell the young man as the head coach. The positional coach has to sell the young man. And then the young man has to see himself there for the next 3 to 4 years. I mean, that's every college student, right? Yes. You're making a decision. Can you see yourself here for the next 3 to 4 years in South Bend? It all becomes part of the equation. And if you feel confident to this point, talking to the young man and getting a feel for his recruitment, and you feel like Notre Dame is the leader, that's one of the best feelings I guess we've had for a safety in a long time, this early in the process, and that's a great feeling to have. And I'm happy for Chris O'Leary that is at that point for Jadon Blair.
You know what's funny though, Sean, is I have three guys in this top group where actually Jadon Blair is probably the one I feel less confident about of the three. You know what I mean? Like that's the strength of the point though, is that I think Chris O'Leary and the staff has done a good job of safety recruiting so far in 2025. Now, to your point, can you show them on the field everything that they need to see and from a full picture perspective to keep them once you get them, right? If you get them. But I also think a cool note on Jadon Blair. This one's pretty wild, Sean. I was talking about this to Brian, I think, yesterday, but check this one out. So after this week's game, Jadon Blair will have seen Notre Dame in person more times than any other recruits in the 2023 season because he was at Notre Dame, Ohio State. He was also at Duke last week visiting Duke, and he's going to be in Louisville this week visiting Louisville. So he's going to see Notre Dame three straight weeks, man. That's weird. I've never seen that before in my life. Literally one home game and two away games. And again, he's there to see Duke last week. He's here to see Louisville this week. But it's still kind of an interesting coincidence that he's seeing Notre Dame 3 straight weeks, is it not? Like, that's kind of interesting, I thought. I don't know.
And he more than likely he's going to see 3 really good defensive performances. Because I think Notre Dame's going to come up with another great defensive performance this week.
I think so too. I think so too. Yeah, I'm not super high on Jack Plummer, so no. Yeah. I mean, I like some of the skill position at Louisville, but yeah, Jack Plummer, I don't think he's it. So Jadon Blair, star safety out of North Carolina. I think Notre Dame's in a really good spot. Another player, Sean, you talked about parents and getting parents on board a little bit. A fun one is Mr. Ivan Taylor, who's out of Winter Garden, Florida, who's the son of Ike Taylor, former Pittsburgh Steeler great. He's actually visiting Notre Dame for the Pittsburgh game, the home game in a couple weeks, which obviously Ike Taylor didn't go to University of Pittsburgh, but he played with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I still thought that was kind of like a cool little thing. You know, he's playing against Pittsburgh, and that's where his dad played. But Ivan Taylor has been to Notre Dame multiple times. And again, he's not in a rush necessarily. But if you ask me today, is Notre Dame the possible leader for Ivan Taylor? I would say, yeah, probably. If not, the top 2 for sure. And he's one of those guys, Sean, that you hit on earlier, as far as you're getting safeties now that can play a little bit of everything, especially in Al Golden's defense, right? They play from the roof, they can rotate down, but then they can play nickel. A nickel is a big thing. And Ivan Taylor is a kid that I think would be a great nickel. Like, he would be a tremendous nickel. He literally does that for Winter Garden now, plays near the line of scrimmage, and plays man-to-man in the slot. He does a lot of the nickel work, blitzing off the slot. I'm really high on Ivan Taylor, man. He's a good football player, in my opinion.
Athletic and physical.
Yeah, very physical.
Yep. I think I was watching like one of his films, and it started out with special teams, and I'm like, this dude laid out 3 dudes on one play. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, what kid in high school wants to be that physical on special teams? But like you said, the pedigree, the NFL pedigree.
And he's only 170 pounds, which is wild too. And he still throws his weight around. It's cool, man. It's really cool.
Yeah, and it you know, you just get the feeling like, okay, this kid gets it. He knows how to play. Similar to what we felt about Benjamin Morrison, right? Not highly touted, but the background, you can tell he came in very mature, knew how to play the position. You get that with Ivan Taylor. And it's good to have him coming in against that whole Pitt thing. That is ironic and funny.
That's a train wreck, by the way, man.
And I think there might be some conversations going on, because if you remember when Marcus Freeman was on the Pivot, he and Ryan Clark had a brief conversation about the connection between all of them and Benjamin Morrison, because Marcus Freeman knew his dad. And then, you know, I believe Ryan Clark's son goes to Benjamin Morrison's dad's church, and they also knew each other from the NFL. So you have this combination. So Ryan Clark played with Ike Taylor. So I'm sure he could tell Ike Taylor, like, hey, yo, Marcus Freeman, and
It's cool,
they're
dude. Yeah.
good. And I'm sure
Yeah.
Benjamin Morrison's dad, spend time can tell him the same thing. So it's a
Sure.
connection where Ike Taylor probably has spoken to them, and he probably has a kid from the South, from Florida.
Mhm.
This is when you probably get more good foot feedback from about Notre Dame that's needed for kids from the South. Like if you're going to get a
Right.
kid from the South, what is the connection or the feedback that kid or their parents are going to get to
Right.
kind of like elevate just the experience of the academics, Marcus Freeman, the coaching
Yep.
staff, and the brand of Notre Dame? You might need a little bit extra, and that whole connection might be something that helps out with Iman Taylor.
Sean, I want to ask you something because you just mentioned about Southeast and getting the kids out of there, Florida especially. We know Notre Dame's had its trouble in Florida recently. Obviously, Ivan Taylor's a Florida kid. But I
Mhm.
want to ask you, because I haven't asked you because you haven't been on a podcast with me about this topic. But so Notre Dame just got a commitment from Joseph Reif a couple weeks ago, who's an Illinois kid, right?
Yeah.
Before that, though, Notre Dame had 5 commits, and here are where they're from. Okay, 2 were from Florida, one's from Arkansas, one's from Alabama, one's from Mississippi. What are
Mhm.
your thoughts on how Notre Dame is killing the Southeast right now in recruiting to start this 2025 cycle?
Well, it's due diligence, right?
Yeah,
If water keeps hitting a rock, eventually it's going to make a dent, and then it's going to be a crack, and then eventually that part of the rock will erode and fall off, right?
sure. Yep.
They've been doing this over the course of two years, maybe longer.
Yeah.
All right. Texas, there were guys that didn't get in Texas, but look, they go in, they get Jaden Greathouse, they get other players, right?
Yep.
Um, they go into the state of Georgia. They get in on a DeMello. They get a kid from the state of Georgia at the wide receiver position, and
Canyon.
ultimately
Yeah.
he changes his mind. And Isaiah Canyon,
Yep.
but they put in the work. They go.
They did.
They get a Keon Keeley.
Sure.
They put in the work. They go. And like I said, I remember telling you, even in losing Keon Keeley, the fact that every kid in Florida sees, man,
Mm.
Keon Keeley was really considering Notre Dame
Right.
and
Right.
was
Mhm.
committed. Like
Yep.
eventually he went to Alabama, but the fact that he was committed, it's a positive because all of the other kids down south, they're watching. So, and then you hear what a kid like Caleb Downs, what he says about Notre Dame and his multiple visits. It's just putting in the work, man. You put in the work, and eventually, I guess if you want to call them the outliers,
Right.
because there's so much talent down there that even with Georgia and Alabama over promising, they can't
Yes.
take everybody.
Yep.
So the kids that fall through the cracks or the outliers or on the wayside, now you go and collect those kids that are
Yep.
really good players, and they've done a great job. They've done a great job because for a long time, the question, especially during the Brian Kelly era, was he started out well, right? Because he got
Yeah.
Lynch, he got Nix, he got Stephon Tuitt. Like early on in the Brian Kelly era, he kind of built up the program, hitting the South, hitting Georgia, hitting Florida, and then he went away from it and went more East Coast, more West Coast. But now that staff has done the work and they're reaping the
Yep.
benefits. And I think it's going to get even better with each year. I really do.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's the biggest thing for me is that we talk about the Southeast, but Notre Dame is such a national brand that Notre Dame needs to touch everywhere. Like
Mhm.
we talked about Texas. I mean, you signed 4 despite having a decommitment in the 2023 class from a Texas kid. You still had 4 players from the state of Texas that are now at the University of Notre Dame in the 2023 class. 2024, Notre Dame has touched Texas again, but now they're also hitting the Georgias of the world. They're also going down to North Carolina. I mean, we talk about the North Carolina pipeline in 2020, 2024, getting Bryce Young and getting Micah Gilbert and getting Jack Larson. And then obviously California in 2023 as well. You got Cooper Flanagan out there. You got Rico Flores. Notre Dame needs to hit every area of the country. And one spot, Sean, that is kind of becoming a little, it's not a pipeline because I don't think you're going to hit it every single year or hit it in volume every single year. But Notre Dame is starting to really recruit like New England schools a lot more, like those types of schools, right? Connecticut is a spot that I don't remember too many Connecticut players coming to Notre Dame, but all of a sudden, they were recruiting obviously the Smith twins this past cycle in 2024 for a while. 2025, there's two big time guys on the board, Ethan Long and Matty Augustine, who's an offensive tackle in the 2025 class out of Brunswick School. And the last guy that I feel really, really good about with Notre Dame, and probably the best out of the three, is Ethan Long, who is a 6'2", 180-ish pound safety. Very athletic, very talented, can also play off. He's played offense at his previous school. Now he just plays safety here. But he's another kid, Sean, that the coaches are really high on the versatility he brings. He can do stuff down near the box. He can play over the top. He can play from single high alignments at times. Notre Dame is really in a good spot with Ethan Long right now. And they're in a good spot with, it's funny, Tom Lemming, who's a guy that I respect a lot, obviously the godfather of recruiting, he tweeted out a picture. He was at Brunswick School, I guess, yesterday or over the last couple of days. Matty Augustine was there with Ethan Long, and Matty Augustine had some Notre Dame shorts on. I know everyone freaks out about like, wow, that guy's got Notre Dame. This guy's got a school's shorts on. He's got to be committed to Notre Dame.
Oh, right? He's wearing this school's gloves and yeah.
Well, it's like Jeremiah McClellan committed to Ohio State was wearing Oregon gloves like a couple weeks ago, and everyone lost their minds like they always do. It's just so funny. But Ethan Long, man, Notre Dame has been feeling good about this one, I believe, on that side of things. They've been in good position for a couple months. Every time I talk to Ethan about timelines, it's kind of don't really have one. It's like when something happens, it happens type of situation. And I think Notre Dame is really putting themselves in a great spot with a kid like an Ethan Long.
Like you said, he's right there with Jadon Blair. Athleticism, long, can make plays. The Connecticut area, the Boston area, the Pittsburgh area, right? There's so much talent coming out of those areas. And Notre Dame has been, Notre Dame, in my opinion, got picky with certain areas towards the end of the previous regime. I think they really like New Jersey. They had success in New York during the BK era, but you really didn't hear a lot from like the Boston, Connecticut area. And this goes to a lot of, you have to watch population migration as well, right? Because based upon population migration, like the level of high school talent in a particular state or area can change in a matter of 3 to 4 years. And it's amazing. Illinois, I remember, took a dip, I would say about 6 or 7 years ago. And now it's back on the rise because a lot of people that have moved to the South are now moving back to Illinois in spite of the tax situation, right? Which is absolutely ridiculous. But the jobs are starting to come back to Illinois, so people are starting to move back. I know there are a lot of people that move to Texas, right? Move their kids to Texas, move their kids down to Las Vegas and in that area and in the New Mexico area. And now you're starting to see the Las Vegas prep bowl or prep scene just explode, right? You had the Bishop Gorman, which is a traditional power, and maybe one more school, but now you literally have 6 to 7, prep schools out there that are like loaded with talent. Arizona, the Phoenix area, the Chandler area, the Scottsdale area. So when you start talking about areas like this, an area like Connecticut now becomes a star. And you start having like the Smith twins, and then you have, Ethan Long, and you start stacking up year after year these type of elite players. Now schools are starting to pay more attention. And Ethan Long to me is the type of kid, Notre Dame's on him now, right? As he stretches things out and he goes through his recruitment, I'm pretty sure Penn State will come in.
Oh, they already
Ohio
are.
State with
Ohio State and
see,
Penn State are already high on the list. Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
they're high on the
Michigan
list.
too. Michigan's high on the
Yeah.
list. Yeah. Yep.
And then, you know, because they can, and this is how they operate, here come the SEC schools, right?
Right. Yep.
They'll come late to the process and apply pressure. So Jadon Blair, like you said, his recruitment might be Chris O'Leary saying, look, what do I need to do to get him to commit early? Because I get a feeling like I might be able to get him to commit early. Ethan Long, it's more of the long game, and you say to yourself, okay, how long do I hang in here? What's the line of demarcation?
Yep.
And how many resources do I want to commit to this youngster? And I'm still looking. Like I'm still evaluating. I'm still watching film. I'm still watching tape, even though these are the guys that I really love. So it should be pretty interesting. But that Connecticut, look, I was confused by the Smith twins recruitment. I was like, yo.
That was weird. It was weird. Yeah.
They went from like
it's continued to be weird since they committed to Michigan as well. But yeah, it's been weird. It's been a weird. Yeah.
Like highly thought of, super high on Notre Dame.
Yep.
Then all of a sudden this school, then they commit to Michigan. Then they're flirting. Now they're flirting with other schools, and it's like Colorado's in the mix. It's like, all right, what? But I can understand because if I'm not mistaken, I think I heard this the other day. Connecticut has the most prep schools.
That makes sense. That's probably correct. Yeah, I would
like
think
the
so.
number of prep schools has like doubled.
It has because it's gotten built up. I think Massachusetts is a little bit of the same, so it's like the New England schools type of thing because they're like they're basically boarding schools and prep schools. Like they're going out and just for specializing type of thing. So yeah, no, it's getting built up. The New England football, just in general, from a high school level, has gotten a whole lot better over the last couple of years. I think it's going to continue to get a whole lot better. So Ethan Long is obviously a part of that movement. But that's really three guys, folks, that I think that we need to keep close eyes on, because I would say that Notre Dame is in a very good spot with all of Jadon Blair, all of Ethan Long, all of Ivan Taylor. I also want to throw Corey Costner, just kind of a quick note on Corey Costner. He was just offered by Notre Dame a couple months ago. He's a Florida kid, kind of a really nice, kind of dynamic dual threat type of player as far as playing offense on the wide receiver position and playing safety. But you just need a little bit more information on him. He's never been to Notre Dame up until this point. So let's get him to campus and then see kind of how that trends from there. Sean, this next group, I would say right now, Notre Dame is continuing to recruit this next group. And I think that there is some level of interest on both sides of the coin, I would say. It's just, I have a little bit more reservation as far as if Notre Dame can close on this group for various reasons, whether that is, maybe they like Notre Dame, but maybe just not quite to that level. Maybe they like a couple more schools a little bit more than Notre Dame. And partially also maybe Notre Dame's prioritizing a couple other players. So I think it's from both sides as far as why they're not in a top group of you feel good about where Notre Dame is with them. And I just want to throw the three names out here, and then let's just have a conversation about this group just in general, because it's a very intriguing group. I'll provide a couple of updates here. So Jordan Young, who's a safety out of Monroe, North Carolina, he personally is the best safety that I have seen in the 2025 class. I think that kid is an absolute star. He's actually seen Notre Dame this season, not at home for a home game, but he was at the NC State game this past season, this season. So he's seen Notre Dame in person a little bit. He visited Notre Dame this offseason. Some level of interest there. But I think that it's going to be about getting Jordan Young back to campus, because I think that Jordan Young is a really, really fantastic football player, and Notre Dame is continuing to pursue him hard. It's just about, can you land him type of thing. Another one is Mattai Tagovailoa, who is a safety out of Nevada. I think you mentioned Nevada at one point as well, as far as the state that's getting more built up outside of just Bishop Gorman, right? Like there's more to Nevada football than just Bishop Gorman now. Mattai is visiting Notre Dame for the USC game next week. So I talked to Matt Ty in the past. He listed, I believe, Oklahoma, USC, and Notre Dame as the three schools that were really standing out to him at that time. Now, things change obviously pretty quickly in the recruiting landscape, but Notre Dame's in an okay spot with Matt Ty Tagovailoa, but he has never been to campus before. So getting him to campus is obviously a priority. And the last guy I want to throw into this last group is Trey McNutt, who's a defensive back out of the state of Ohio, one of the top in the entire country, best defenders in general. He is being pursued by everyone, from SEC schools to the Ohio States of the world, Midwest powers, everyone. He's been Notre Dame actually twice in the past already, twice this offseason. He's going to be coming back for the USC game as well. So I don't feel great about where things are with Trey McNutt, but I'll say it like this, Sean. He's about to make his third visit in about 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
That's legitimate interest, right? Ultimately, I think it's going to be tough to get him out of Ohio. I think Ohio State probably has the upper hand with Trey McNutt, but he likes Notre Dame enough to keep visiting.
Yeah.
So there's got to be something there, right? And of these three safeties, Jordan Young is a little bit of the free safety type, can make a lot of plays over the field, work from depth. Matt Tagovailoa is 6'4", 190 plus pounds. And Trey McNutt's that guy that's a little bit like Ivan Taylor. He can play nickel. He can play down. There's some sites that list him as a cornerback, an outside corner in the class. So, man, again, Sean, these guys are all extremely talented. Notre Dame is pushing for all of them. And two out of three of the guys I just mentioned, between Tagovailoa, McNutt, and Young, Tagovailoa and McNutt are both returning for the USC game as well. So I think a great way to end this, as far as these players, and we don't even have to hit on these specifically, but Notre Dame next week has a massive opportunity against USC. I mean, Ohio State was huge, and I don't think it's going to be a bigger push than Ohio State from a recruiting perspective, but right. USC is an opportunity, man, in the 2025 class. Absolutely massive.
Look, when you talk about the names you just mentioned, it's all about, he's the McNutt kid. He's from Ohio. You feel good about that. You know why you feel good about that? Because of what you got. Because of the flags you planted, right?
Sure.
Brendan Vernon, right? You were in on Luke Montgomery. Even though he went to Ohio State, you were in on him, right?
Yep.
That's another flag. You got the Hobbs kid. Another good kid, right? Ben Minnick, like the buzz about Notre Dame and the state of Ohio is real. It's real. And one of the parts of recruiting is being able to create a buzz in certain regions amongst the young players there. That's one of the things that has hurt Notre Dame recently with Chicago kids. There was no buzz. The buzz was Michigan, Ohio State, and then came in other programs like the SEC. There really was no buzz. Notre Dame now in the last, they went after, they're still recruiting Justin Scott, or they went after Justin Scott. They're in on Burgess. They're in on Taylor. They got Cam Williams. They're starting to reestablish. Now the Cam Williams is one of like the best players in the state. Heck, they recruited Darian Dupree, even though he went to Wisconsin. Like now the big names can say, yeah, I was thinking about Notre Dame. And now the sophomores and the freshmen are saying, oh, okay. I'm saying, oh, he almost went to Notre Dame. Oh, he did go to Notre Dame. And Ohio already has that built up. So I can see a McNutt kid, even though you might feel like Ohio State. Once again, you talk about Chris O'Leary and what is it going to take to close? Hey, it's going to take a win over USC. Yeah. It takes a win over USC. It takes another dominant win on the road in Death Valley over Clemson. It takes a big-time bowl game win. Like, this is the elevation of the program, right? Because we saw Notre Dame start off slow under Marcus Freeman, but turn things around and end on a really good note with a really good recruiting class. Now, let's expand upon that on the field.
Yep.
Get big wins and keep planting those flags. And like I said, just keep going after it. keep going after it in states like Ohio, Texas, Florida, Georgia, Connecticut, heck, North Carolina, Maryland, the DC area. Just keep plugging away and getting the
Yep.
buzz. But Notre Dame, I've talked to, and I will say this, and I don't know if there's an issue. I have talked to several former Notre Dame players
Mhm.
that have told me, yo, I know kids in this area. I've been trying to send the staff or connect to Notre Dame to let them know, like, hey, take a look at this kid. And for some
Yep.
reason, I haven't been able to connect. And I was like, man, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
Yeah.
I, I actually gave a couple of them Brian's phone number. Like, yo, send the kid to Brian, and
Mhm.
maybe he can forward it. But Notre Dame, in my opinion, I don't think really takes advantage of the brand that it has. Like the Notre Dame brand is so huge.
Yep.
And I think Notre Dame sometimes just sits back and says, from an administration standpoint,
Mhm.
right? Because I think the coaching staff, they work it. They work the floor for forever and everything. But just like the support of the
Yep.
program and the administration, and maybe Pete Bavacco can bring something different.
Let's
But
hope.
when you look at what Utah just did with their non-for-profit collective, and
Mhm.
a lot of people might say, "Oh, well, it's a truck." Well, you know, it's something.
It is definitely something. You're not wrong about that. I mean, it all helps in my opinion. It all helps, right? I mean,
Absolutely,
it
absolutely,
shows that you at least are on top of something and that you care
yeah,
about it, right? Like
yeah,
there's initiative about behind it. So I agree. I 100% agree. Well, Sean, that's 2025 safety recruiting, though. Hit on a lot of names there, obviously. Make it or break it class for Chris O'Leary, who's done some good things as a coach,
yeah.
some good as a recruiter, but not enough good, not nearly enough good as a recruiter. So we're going to get into a little bit of previewing some of the Notre Dame targets that are going to be visiting other schools in week 6 of the college football season. So before we get there, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. 5-star reviews are very much appreciated on any and every podcast platform that you frequent. Sean, I know we usually kind of hyper focus on recruiting for Notre Dame when there's a home game, but obviously Notre Dame is playing at Louisville this week. But
Yeah,
despite that, there's a lot of recruits visiting not only Louisville for the Notre Dame game, but also all across college football, which I think we always talk about this, and I know we have definitely spoke about this before. Actions always mean more than words in recruiting, right? How
absolutely.
interested is a player in a school? How many times have you been there? How many times? How often do they talk to the staff? What is their viewpoint on what they're looking for as a young man? Those things all matter, but the reason that I used the first one, where are they visiting, as the main one is that if you really love a school, you find a way to get back to it. Ultimately, that was the biggest red flag in the Justin Scott recruitment for me. It was like that kid has not been to Notre Dame in months, and he lives 90 minutes away. Hasn't been there in months. Other players like Justin Thurman and Ivan Taylor, a guy we just talked about, they've been back multiple times the last few months, despite being Florida kids that are quite far away from South Bend, Indiana, quite far. Cooper Perry's been to Notre Dame multiple times this offseason and into this season, and he's a California kid. Like, if you really love a place, you're going to find a way to get back there, right? So following the actions of where these kids travel is very telling to what they think about a team or a school in a recruitment. I want to start us off. The first one I wrote about, and the piece is at irishbreakdown.com. I highlighted a few of these players that will be visiting in different spots. There's two interesting players that will be visiting Louisville this weekend, Sean. One that we've talked about, one that we haven't, and the one that we haven't is going to make some people tailspin. I'm going to tell you this right now, guys. You're
Oh,
going to
I
tailspin a
already
little bit.
know the chat is about to go crazy.
It is, man. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, man. I meant Arizona for Cooper Perry. That's my apologies, man. I was thinking about Logan Saldate for some reason. So Notre Dame at number 25, Louisville, number 5-0. So one player that's going to be visiting Louisville this weekend, Jadon Blair, who I already hit on. Jadon will be seeing Notre Dame play in person last 3 weeks. Saw me against Ohio State, saw them last week at Duke, and we'll be seeing them again when they take on Louisville tomorrow night on Saturday. Another one, Sean, that will be visiting Louisville apparently is 2024 Indianapolis, Indiana Northside safety Bronte Johnson will be visiting Louisville. Now, I'm told, before people tailspin or lose their minds too quickly here, I'm told that Bronte Johnson is visiting Louisville with the teammates. That's the reason that he's going to visit there. And I know a million people are going to ask, are you worried about this? Should we be worried about this? My answer right now is no, you should not be worried about this as of now, because there have been some situations where players have visited with with their teammates. It has happened. I think of last year. Do you remember when Adon Schuler visited Kentucky with a teammate? And everyone's like, why is he going to Kentucky? Why is he going to Kentucky? Bronte is visiting with a teammate, and sometimes that's legitimate, sometimes it's not. I believe that there's nothing to worry about with this situation. If this becomes he's visiting another school every single weekend, then we can start having a conversation about that. But I just don't want people to jump off the bus here, right? Jump off the truck and just have the worst thoughts in the world about Bronte Johnson. Bronte worked a long time to get himself in a position that he could be a part of the Notre Dame program. I believe that he's very solid, and I believe that he is visiting with the teammates. But he's going to be at Louisville this weekend. I think it's already been reported by some. And if it hasn't been reported enough by some, there's going to be pictures of him at Louisville this weekend. It's going to happen. It's going to happen because he's a top safety. So nobody freak out. I think it'll be okay. Just some information to be aware of. So I don't know, Sean, if you have any thoughts about that, but let's just not jump off the bus on this one, in my opinion.
I think, look, I was having this conversation with Malik a little bit earlier today.
Yep.
The leverage for high school kids in recruiting has changed so much in the last 5 years.
Yep.
To the point that they can be open and honest about everything. It is really no reason to mislead or lie.
Yeah.
Because the rules allow so much with visits. You might as well just be honest with everyone that's recruiting you, schools that you're committed to. And it's really a landscape where fans probably should start to understand that this is going to become more commonplace. Where kids that are committed are going to take visits because, that's the leverage they have. Whether it's with a teammate or that's just the way it is, So things are changing, and I'm sure people might not like it.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, the most powerful thing you said, which is if knowing the background of
that's the most
Bronte
important
Johnson,
part. Yep.
that does not yield itself to him being on the fence now. It just doesn't. Just the work that he's put in.
Yes.
For an opportunity to get into an academic institution like Notre Dame.
Yep.
The last thing he would want to do is go and consider a school like Louisville, in my opinion.
Yep. And it is an unofficial visit. And I agree, Sean. That's the reason that I'm not at all worried about this, because this is the first visit that he's gone on. And this is, like you said, this is a young man with the backstory that he wanted to go to Notre Dame desperately. And he had to put in work to make sure he could go to Notre Dame, and he put in that work. I don't think those people are so easily swayed away from schools that they really want to that high of a degree, right? So, yes, I'm not worried at all about Bronte Johnson. It is news, though, and we do have to report it because he is going to be at Louisville. And if you didn't hear it from us, you're going to see it on Twitter, I'm sure, at some point of like, oh, Bronte Johnson's at Louisville. He's got the little Louisville tag on. What's up with that? That's weird. So, yeah, there's the news for you all. All right, let's go now, Sean. Some games with some prevalence to Notre Dame recruiting. I'm going to kind of rapid fire through these because I want to get to mailbag, man, because I haven't had you
All
for
right.
mailbag for a long time, man. So let's rock through these, and I'll stop when I need to. Alabama, number 11 in the country, at Texas A&M. They have several players, Sean, that Notre Dame has offered in the 2025 class and even a 2026 kit. So Torrey Blaylock, who's out of Humble, Texas, I'm not going to pronounce it because I'm going to butcher his high school's name, but he is the son of Derek Blaylock, who played in the NFL. Very talented running back. Notre Dame already has 2 running back commits in the 2025 class in Daniel Anderson and James Thurman. But they also have another very talented running back in James Simon that's going to be visiting for the USC game. So Notre Dame is still keeping tabs on running backs for whatever reason. So Torrey Blaylock is going to be there. Phillip Bell, star wide receiver out of Mission Viejo, California, is going to be there. Landon Rink, defensive lineman out of Cypress, Texas, Cy-Fair, which is the same high school as former Notre Dame player Brock Wright. Yeah. And Kelvion Riggins, who's a linebacker out of Forney High School. So, Sean, also, I want to throw this out here because this is the world that we live in now, which is absolutely hysterical. 2026 quarterback, Jared Curtis, out of Nashville, Tennessee Christian School, also on campus, one of 5 quarterbacks in the 2026 class that Notre Dame has offered up until this point. Sean, we are at the point in recruiting now where with Deuce Knight in the 2025 class committed to Notre Dame, that we're talking about 2026 quarterbacks. Yeah. How does that make you feel, Sean? How does that make you feel? I'll tell you how it makes me feel, man.
I live in Chicago where we talk about 5th and 6th graders going to college basketball. So no, it's serious. Like literally, we're talking about 6th graders going to Duke in basketball in Chicago. Yeah. That is the culture. So hearing that in 2000, that's nothing. That's nothing. But that has. But once again, I think the recruiting clock and landscape has really evolved and changed. And I think it has really become more like college basketball recruiting. See, college basketball recruiting, we heard about the number 1 8th grader in college basketball for like 20 years. Dude, they did like a ABC 2020 special on Stephon Marbury when he was the number 1 8th grader. That was like over 10 years ago, but that has always been the culture of college basketball.
Starberry. I haven't heard his name in a while, man.
Yeah. But I think college football is starting on a smaller scale, but it's starting to evolve to that point.
Sure.
Where you're starting to hear about this kid, it's this 8th grader that is playing up with the freshman team. It is what it is, but recruiting is it's so amazing, man, because I talked to a coach in Chicago, and he said recruiting for him is worse than it's ever been. I said, what do you mean? I said, dude, your program is one of the top programs in the city. He said, yeah. I used to be positive that my top 8 kids were going to a Power 5 school. He said, with the transfer portal now, he said, maybe my top 4 or 5.
Oh, wow.
And now my 6, 7, and 8 kid, their scholarship is being given to a transfer.
That's
because
wild.
Coaches, they want guys that have experience rather than having to develop the 6th, 7th, or 8th best kid out of this particular high school program. So now those kids have to go to smaller programs. And he said, it's really not fair. And he said, I hate it because the dreams of these kids are not being fulfilled. He said, but I tell them to work hard and they can be those kids in the transfer portal in a year or 2. But that's wild, man. Everything's changing. So it doesn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me if a 27 kid got some buzz.
Well, Sean, I just had to report about the quarterback from Lakota West was at Notre Dame last week or for the Ohio State game. There's a 2027 quarterback. So yeah, man, it's already starting. It's already starting. It's just it's wild, man. So who's the top 6th grader in Chicago right now in basketball? Can you tell me who the top one is?
I cannot tell you who the top 6th grader is.
Okay.
I cannot tell you. But there's a kid that is at Beasley He's the point guard, seventh
Okay.
grade. His name is Thomas Jones.
Thomas Jones. Okay. Like
They
former
call him
Chicago
TJ.
Bears running back Thomas
They
Jones.
call
Okay.
him. They call him TJ.
Okay.
And I don't know if you remember Rashard Griffith.
Sounds very familiar. Sounds very
King
familiar.
High School. He was a 7-footer.
Okay.
King High School. Went to
Uh-huh.
Wisconsin. Played
Okay.
Wisconsin. I think he got drafted by the Dallas Mavericks.
Gotcha. Okay.
His son is like one of the best 7th or 8th graders.
That's incredible,
So,
man.
dude, in Chicago, you can go to like a McDonald's where it's a bunch of old men sitting in there talking coffee, and I can
Yeah.
guarantee you they're talking 6th, 7th, and 8th grade basketball. Guarantee it.
That's wild.
Yeah,
Man.
I guarantee it. It is absolutely crazy.
That's really crazy. I missed my opportunity, Sean. I almost went to a Camden High game this year because DeJuan Wagner's son played for Camden High. DJ Wagner. That's
He's at
was he at
Kentucky
Kentucky now?
right?
He's going to Kentucky. Yeah.
yeah.
I didn't get a chance to watch him though, man. I heard he is the truth though. I've not watched him though, but yeah. We'll have to start a college basketball podcast. That'd be a lot of fun, man. We should do that one time. It'd be real fun. All right, before I lose too much of my train of thought because I'm weird like that. Red River, or actually, let me ask you this, Sean, before I get into the Texas-Oklahoma game. What do you call that matchup? Texas versus Oklahoma.
It's the Red River Showdown now, right? Not the shootout. Didn't they change it?
I always call that the Red River Rivalry. That was what I always called it.
I think they changed it trying to be PC. It used to be the Red River Shootout.
Showdown, I think, yeah. Or Shootout, maybe Shootout. I forget.
It was Shootout, and they changed it from Shootout.
It's probably the Showdown now.
Yeah.
Well, Red River Rivalry, or however the heck you want to call it now. That's what I always called it, was Red River Rivalry.
Yeah.
Number 12, Oklahoma at number 3, Texas. They have a few players that Notre Dame has eyes on in that football game. I want to highlight a couple of linebackers, especially because linebacker recruiting in 2025 is going to be incredibly important and incredibly interesting, I should say. One is Taz Williams Jr., wide receiver out of Red Oak, Texas. He will be at the Red River Rivalry. Max Granville, defensive end, out of Sugar Land, Texas, Fort Bend Christian Academy. Also have Elijah Barnes, linebacker out of Dallas, Texas, Skyline. Linebacker Anthony Williams out of Pearland, Texas, Shadow Creek. Linebacker Jaden Shelton out of Dallas, Texas, South Oak Cliff. And then cornerback Dorian Brew out of now Conroe, Texas High School. He was, of course, formerly of Ohio. The state of Ohio.
Yeah.
So, Sean, I want to highlight a couple of these linebackers real quick because Notre Dame's actually in a decent spot with both of these kids quietly, I would say. I mean, Elijah Barnes out of Skyline speaks very highly of Notre Dame. They'll need to get him on campus at this point. But he says all the right things, stuff that you really like to hear. Anthony Williams out of Pearland Shadow Creek is a young man that has said a lot of great things about Notre Dame and trying to set up a visit this season as well. Linebacker recruiting just kind of plugs along for me, Sean. We made a big deal about 2024 linebacker recruiting because there was a little bit of a cat and mouse up and down affair as far as like trying to figure out who were the top targets, who were not the top targets. Ultimately, you ended up with Kingston Viliamoasa, who's an absolute stud in the class. You ended up with Bodie Cahoon, who, Sean, you want to hear the craziest stat line of all time? Bodie Cahoon, in 6 football games as a senior, has 106 tackles.
Say it again?
In 6 football games, Bodie Cahoon has 106 tackles.
I was about to say something disrespectful. Let me stop.
What are you going to say?
I was about to say something disrespectful, double R. I'm not going to say it. Man. I'm not going to say it.
106 tackles in 6 games, Sean. He had.
I mean, can we get him in the linebacker room now?
This past weekend, they played a triple option team, Sean. He had 25 total tackles, 14 solo, 11 assists in 1 football game. He's that
is That's instinctive football.
Yes.
To
Yeah.
me, that's a football player. I'm not.
Yep.
You're not somebody that I'm teaching to play a position.
Yep.
You're a football player. Like I don't have to teach you how to get to the ball. That's what you do.
Yep.
You step
Well,
on the
Sean,
field and you get to the ball.
I always liked Bodie because I was like, that kid is 6'2", 6'3", and can run, right? Like, and people missed the boat on Bodie that he had only played 5 games of linebacker last season. He was a safety who was learning how to play linebacker. He had a whole offseason to learn how to play linebacker. And my man is averaging now, let's do the quick math on the old calculator here. He's averaging 17.7 tackles a game. 17.7 tackles a game. That's wild, man. So I honestly think, and again, linebacker recruiting was not perfect in 2024. A lot of weird in that instance.
Yeah.
But Bodie Cahoon, I think, was a great evaluation. A great evaluation. I think he was a great evaluation. You got a stud like Kingston. I still have my questions about Teddy Rizak out of Nebraska, out of Omaha West Side, but if he's your third guy, I'm cool with it, man. Like, he's got some talent. He's 6'4" and can run. Like, we're good there, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, he I think linebacker recruiting is in a good spot. We'll see if they can move the needle with Elijah Barnes and Anthony Williams, trying to get both of those kids on campus. They will be visiting for the Red River rivalry, though, this weekend. And I wanted to end the conversation, Sean, about Dorian Brew, who everyone keeps asking about him. So I feel like I want to take a moment to just kind of lay this one out here a little bit. When Dorian Brew,
Notre Dame twice. Has he been to Notre Dame twice?
He's been at least once, maybe twice. Yeah, no, he has been Notre Dame twice. He's been Notre Dame twice. So he's been Notre Dame twice in the past. Once this offseason, early in the offseason, though. He is a player that could play wide receiver on the next level. He could play corner. He could play safety. Notre Dame likes him as a corner, obviously. And Notre Dame was in a great spot with Dorian Brew for a pretty long time. For several months, I would say. They were probably, if not the leader, they were top 2 to 3. They were right in that ballpark, though. They were there. But at that point, Dorian Brew had not been offered by Ohio State. Dorian Brew then got offered by Ohio State. I felt like things were starting to trend away from Notre Dame a little bit, towards the Buckeyes. Then Dorian Brew moves down to Texas. And I feel like now a lot of these Texas schools are involved. So I just want to put this out there in the space because I know people keep asking about Dorian Brew. I just don't feel good about it personally. And Dorian, I know he still talks to the coaches, and I know that he still says the right things about Notre Dame, but I just think that this one has been trending away from Notre Dame for a while, and I just would not anticipate Dorian Brew being a part of the Notre Dame class. We'll see, though. Notre Dame's going to keep recruiting him. They're going to keep doing their due diligence there, but I just don't feel great about that one as of today, which I don't want to say okay with it, Sean, because Dorian Brew's a stud. There's no doubt about that. But Notre Dame's recruiting some other really good corners, man. Like some really good dudes. Like I think they're in a good spot with Creed Thomas and Devin Williams, and like there's a lot of really good players in the cornerback group.
You see what's happening right there, Double R?
Yeah.
See, you're being controlled by an outside stimuli, and you don't even realize it, right? Everybody just got to witness. He's talking about Dorian Brew, things fading, and then immediately, and he's a stud. But then immediately Double R says, but you know what? That's cool. That's cool. You know why? Because that position in the recruiting and development has been darn good and consistent.
It has been.
So when another kid fades at that position, you're like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. And that is recruiting. Like you lose out on a kid that might be really good, but you know that the cupboard is definitely not going to be bare.
It's not.
And it's not. So
it's not. Yeah, I mean, because Sean, I was just looking at the list, and like I was saying, you feel good about where Notre Dame is with Thomas. You feel good about Devin Williams. You feel good about Mark Zachary. They're still recruiting Dallas Golden. They're still recruiting Charles Bell. They're still recruiting Chuck McDonald. Like Notre Dame's in a good spot from the cornerback position. And that's one spot where even if you don't get maybe the top of your board player and you just get two really good players there, though,
Yeah.
you're going to be with Mike Mickens. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
you'll be all right. I mean,
Yeah.
you'll be
And
okay.
I think you get the bump, of course, on field next
Yep.
year with that 25 class. It's even more impressive because that's the year that Notre Dame probably gets his first 3-and-done defensive back in the NFL draft in a long time. So that's what that 25 class, will be seeing in action. Oh, snap.
Yes.
Notre Dame, Benjamin Morrison, 3 years out.
Yep.
Christian Gray, man, game going to the next level, sophomore year. That's
Leonard
what that
Moore.
25 class is going to be able to see on the field and off the field. So the narrative will start to change with the success. And that's what we were talking about. You know, the cornerback position has gotten to that level. The safety position now needs to start taking that first step to that. To say, which, heck, Kyle Hamilton going in the first round, you thought might have been, but they didn't have anybody to back it up to say, okay, that's the next guy. So,
John, I thought when they got Brandon Joseph as a transfer, I was like, dang man, they're about to explode on the safety scene.
You almost made me choke on my water, Double R.
Oh man, it was so sad, man.
You talk about a huge disappointment.
Yeah, man. I really liked Brandon Joseph at Northwestern, and then he just was never the same guy again, man. It was weird. And then I saw him at the combine, and I'm asking him like real football questions, right? About like schematics and stuff. And I'm like, this kid's smart too. Like, I just don't get it. What happened here? I just don't understand exactly what happened. But it happens with Brandon Joseph, unfortunately. So
yeah.
That's the last huge game, Sean. Just quick note: Virginia Tech at number 5, Florida State. Wide receiver Kobe Howard out of Fort Lauderdale Western High School is going to be there 2025 as well. He will be visiting Notre Dame next week for USC as well. So Kobe Howard will be back for the first time in over a year. Last time he was here, Sean, he was a big name freshman who had everything in front of him. Sophomore year was obliterated from a knee injury, catastrophic knee injury. So he's back healthy for Western. We'll see if Notre Dame can make a move with
it's so
Mr.
funny
Kobe
because
Howard.
I remember Double R, his first trip. You could tell he was super amped because I remember his photo shoot. I remember his photo shoot when he first came to Notre Dame. Yeah.
Dude, he's a really good player too, man. Like I like him a lot. You know what I mean? It's just apparently when that happened, I think it was Mario Cristobal was there like at the game, and his knee just like exploded on the field. Like it was just ugly, man. Like because he had like a 70 receptions, over 800 yards. Kobe Howard has as a freshman. Like he was a legit dude as a freshman. A lot of offers. And I remember there was a picture of him at the hospital, I think, with Mario Cristobal at one point or something like that, because it was just like such a catastrophic injury that happened. So I'm happy to see that he's back healthy. They're playing American Heritage this weekend, so that'll be a fun one for Kobe to showcase his talents against some of the top schools.
And it's funny, I got Archer. I believe Archer is an Ohio State fan, but he makes a really good point, man. Before we transition.
Yeah.
You're starting to see, even at the big programs, like Notre Dame has had to go to the portal for quarterback and safety. Ohio State has had to go for the offensive line. And like they just put 2 big tackles in the NFL draft, but they didn't have the depth behind it. And it's really, all programs are struggling with depth at some position. And it is amazing because the big boys used to be able to just stack depth after depth after depth. And that's the way college football has changed, and the parity and NIL and the transfer portal has made everything totally different, man. It's a different landscape right now.
Well, Sean, even deeper than just like the recruiting from a high school perspective for the offensive line stuff for Ohio State, Josh Simmons was not their first choice of transfer portal offensive lineman either. I know for a fact that they were after Jeremiah Byers that plays at Florida State now. Like they were after him hard. Like there were several offensive tackles that they tried to get that unfortunately they were not able to get, and Josh Simmons ended up being the guy. So, yeah, man, it's been weird. It's been weird because I like their coach. I like Justin Fry. I think he's a good coach, really.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's been weird though.
Like I said, the Jackson kid could possibly be a first round kid. This his sophomore year, right? I think at Ohio State.
He's a redshirt sophomore, so he's eligible this year.
So he's eligible this year. Look, and for some reason they had to go get help with the tackle. You would think a school like Ohio State would have the next guy in waiting, And Notre Dame Notre Dame has 3 or 4 tackles waiting if they lose both guys this year. Notre Dame would not have to go to the portal for the.
Oh no, they don't have to go portal for offensive line. No,
not for the offensive line, but they might. Do they go back to the portal for a quarterback next year? Possibly. Another safety? Possibly. But I don't see them going for a cornerback.
I think you have to go for a safety. You definitely have to go for a safety. I think it's man, it's so weird. But you're right. Offensive line is one spot that I don't think Notre Dame will ever have to go into the portal out of necessity. If they're getting a guy out of there, it's just like, cool, you're really good. Come play Notre Dame. You know what I mean? Like that's Well, let's get into the mailbag next. That's going to wrap up a little bit of where Notre Dame top targets are going to be this week. Before we get to the mailbag, and by the way, MB in front of the questions, make sure that we can distinguish what is a mailbag question and what is not. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast. 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. And also that notification bell on the YouTube is also a great tool to use to know when we have a great show coming up, including tomorrow night after the Notre Dame Louisville game. We'll be able to break it down on the post-game show. All right, Sean, we have some questions here, man. And this is actually my big reason I wanted to have you on here today, Sean, outside the recruiting talk, is I love when we get some random questions. Not all of them are about recruiting, so we'll be able to just talk ball, which is always my favorite thing to do. So let's get us rocking here. The first question is from Brandon Plensner. What's up, Brandon? With all the talent on the board, does Notre Dame plan on taking 3 cornerbacks in 2025? Who would be those top targets? Then the staff is a great place with Thomas, Zachary, Williams, Golden, Humes, McNutt, and others. So, Sean, to my understanding, if Notre Dame does not get a third corner in the 2024 class, because we know they're still pushing for Caleb Beasley to hopefully try to pull him from Tennessee. If they don't, though, and they end with 2 corners, Leonard Moore, Carson Hobbs, I believe that Notre Dame will push for 3 cornerbacks in the 2025 class. Some of the top names on the board, Brandon, is Notre Dame is still pushing for Dorian Brew, who I mentioned. But Notre Dame really likes Creed Thomas a lot. He's a guy that they would 100% take right now. Devin Williams is a player that they like a ton. Mark Zachary is a player that they like a ton. They also like Dallas Golden. I think all of those players would be 100% takes right now. Also keep eyes on guys like Kevin Humes, who are visiting Notre Dame for the USC game. Charles Bell is also visiting Notre Dame for the USC game as well. But I think if you get a class of, let's say, in theory, Creed Thomas, Devin Williams, and Mark Zachary, you're cooking, man. You're cooking. That's pretty good. Yeah. That's really, really good.
I almost want to tell Coach Mickens to relax.
Right.
Because if he keeps doing what he's doing, eventually another job is NFL might start looking at him. It's like you just don't want to lose coaches that are doing a great job.
Right.
But I agree with your assessment. Those names would be a dream class in 25 if you're not able to flip Beasley.
Yeah, it really would be. And if you give Caleb Beasley, then you only take 2 next year, but that's fine because you got Caleb Beasley. So
can you imagine Beasley, Christian Gray, and Ben Moore? Ooh.
It'd be pretty good, man.
Good. My Lord.
Man, would you
if you think Al Golden blitzes now, if he has those 3 at defensive back, Al Golden would lose his mind. The safeties will be blitzing every down.
Because, man, yeah.
Oh, man.
I'm just trying to think like how you would make all those guys happy. Would you just throw like Caleb Beasley at nickel sometimes? Be like, hey, man, you're playing. You're good. You're good to go here. Yeah, it would be a good problem to have. Brandon, I think you mentioned this in the chat. I just kind of wanted to reiterate something real quick, though. I know you had Trey McNutt on this list. As far as I know, Notre Dame is still recruiting him as a safety. Every time I've talked to him, he's talked about Chris O'Leary being the main point of contact and safety.
Yeah.
Maybe that's changed. Maybe they're recruiting him as just a defensive back in general. Like that's always possible, but I do believe that he's being recruited as a safety still. So just a little note there. We had Robert Matichek, love that name, says, so just to be that guy, I guess. Tight ends from Nebraska. Unfortunately, that's still not a thing, right? Sorry in advance, Ryan. I really appreciate it. Of course, this is talking about Carter Nelson out of Ainsworth, Nebraska, 2024 tight end. Robert, this is where it has been and where I would continue to just kind of put it with Carter Nelson. I think that Carter Nelson had a great relationship with Notre Dame. I think that Carter Nelson, and I know for a fact, and he's even said this to people, that Notre Dame still stays in contact, and we can tell you that, right? Like there's still conversation between both sides. As of now, he's still committed to the University of Nebraska. Notre Dame needs to get him back to campus. Like that's if there's anything that is ever going to come of the Carter Nelson Notre Dame stuff, it's going to be trying to get him back to campus. And as of right now, that isn't something that's been planned to my knowledge, right? But if Notre Dame's able to get him back to campus, then I think that Notre Dame might have a shot there. But as of right now, it's just, it's just a talking point. It's like the Caleb Beasley stuff right now for now. It's like, both sides still talk. They still like each other. But like, if Caleb Beasley doesn't get back to campus this fall, it's not going to happen. I feel similarly to Carter Nelson. If Carter Nelson doesn't get back to campus, he's going to go to Nebraska. That's what it is, right? So Notre Dame needs to get him back to campus sometime.
And we talk about what aids and assists in recruiting, and it really, honestly, has been kind of a perfect storm for Notre Dame to kind of stay in the Carter Nelson recruitment because of the struggles at Nebraska, and at the same time, what has taken place in a season where we thought the majority of the passing game would be distributed amongst the wide receivers, and we wouldn't have a dominant tight end in Notre Dame. Guess what pops up in Notre Dame? Another dominant tight end. Another really good tight end. But what do you know? Notre Dame produces another really good tight end. And I remember, this is funny story. I hope B. Drisk is watching, because this is one of those ones where I say, I told you, Michael Mary had the pull hamstring a couple of years ago, and they were on the road against Virginia. It was a night game, and he couldn't go. And Mitchell Evans, I believe, was a red shirt freshman or a freshman, and he played that game. And I think Mitchell Evans had something like, this was the Riley Mills game too, where Riley Mills ended up with like 3 or 4 sacks and ended up sitting at the front of the plane or something like that. And Mitchell Evans I think he had like 4 or 5 receptions and some big plays that night. And I remember telling Brian, like, I think Mitchell Evans has a chance. And Brian was like, I don't know, because he was I think he was a quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. And then he started playing tight end. So he hasn't been playing tight end that long. And to see him like evolve, especially through the injuries he's had over the last couple of years, and become a dude, like step up in the 2 biggest games pretty much. He was dragging Duke defenders all night last week. I felt bad. I'm like, they need to get in the weight room, because their defensive backs were just along for the ride. But I always remember that. I always remember that Virginia game and saying, this kid has a chance.
Yeah.
And to see him like step up and be that next dude, and Holden stays really like still ascending, and getting Eli Reardon back this week, man, that's that perfect storm. Because I didn't know if Carter Nelson would be able to watch and see somebody on TV like a Michael Mayer to say, I can be that guy. But Notre Dame, once again, is able to get a tight end.
Sean, Cooper Flanagan's also playing pretty good ball as a blocking tight end so far as well. Mm-hmm. But Sean, if you would have told me before the season, if you would have told me Notre Dame would have a tight end that goes over 100 yards in a game, I would have said, nah, I don't see that. If you would have told me that Notre Dame had a tight end that would go for over 100 yards twice in one season, I would say not even a chance. If you told me that Notre Dame would have 2 separate tight ends go for 100 yards in one season, no way, man. I'll be full transparency. I was high on Holden States before the season. I thought he was going to be the number 1 tight end at some point this year. I guess he was for a game, right? But Mitchell Evans is a lot more talented than I gave him credit for. He is a lot more talented. He looked, to your point, he looked like Mark Bavaro in that game on
Mm-hmm.
Saturday. Like he was dragging folks, man. Like he was. I mean, he looked like a Cole Kmet, he looked like a really good Notre Dame tight end. So I was wrong about
Mm-hmm.
Mitchell Evans, I think, and I'm very happy to potentially be wrong in him, man, because he's got to stay healthy for sure. But if he is, man, he's got a chance to be really good. He's got a chance to be one of those next guys, I think. So it's nice, man. It's really nice.
It's almost like it's just the DNA. Like
Yeah.
if you're in the room, somebody's gonna come out of that room. Like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
we lost Michael Mayer, but oh, who's next? Holden Stays, maybe. No, Holden
Yeah.
Stays and Mitchell Evans and Cooper Flanagan will start getting him ready. It's just it's
Oh
crazy.
my gosh. Sean, imagine next year, because hopefully at that point you will have back Mitchell Evans, you'll have back Holden Stace, you'll have back Cooper Flanagan, you'll also have Eli Raridan hopefully back fully from an injury, and then you'll have
Yeah.
Jack Larson coming in as well. You are going to be
Yeah.
5 deep at tight end next year, man. Like that's going to be wild. And then
See,
if they're able to flip a Carter Nelson at some point as well, can you imagine that 6 tight end room? Like that's wild, man. That's a lot of
man.
talent, man. Here's a question: who's more talented, Eli Raridan or Carter Nelson?
Well, that's tough because Eli
Right?
was
It's hard. It's a hard question.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe because of the injuries, I could see people leaning to Carter Nelson, but Eli, I'm telling you, when I used to see him before he got injured in fall practice, it was like, yo, this kid moves effortlessly to be that big. I remember on one report, I'm sorry, I just
Yeah.
thought about this moment. We were at
You're fine.
practice
Yeah.
and they went 12 personnel,
Yep.
but it was 4 wide.
Okay.
They were detached. And they were working on the tight ends being the outside guys. And it was Holden Stays and Eli Raridan. Like that's how this was Tommy like experimenting, like, okay, let me put them on the outside and put the receivers in the slot. And
Yeah.
they worked on that like in the red zone. And it was crazy. I'm
Yeah.
like, yo, this is crazy. Like, I can see this. I would be very interested in seeing whether or not we see that come back because it was something they worked on with both of those guys for freshmen in the fall.
Well, Sean, that 2024 mix would be so diverse. You could literally do that if you wanted to. You could line up a whole offensive series if
Yeah.
they're able to flip Carter Nelson again. Like doubtful at this point that happens, but in this, if we're doing this scenario here, theorizing here, could you imagine if I just said, "Hey, we're going to go 11 personnel here, right? The one
Mhm.
tight end you throw in there is Mitchell Evans, and then the 3 wide receivers you throw out there are Carter Nelson on one outside, Holden Stace on the other outside, and then you rotate in the slot between Eli, or actually, I'm sorry, you go Eli Raridan and Carter Nelson outside, and then you
Yeah.
throw either Holden Stace or Jack Larson on the slot. Like you
Yeah.
could do that. You could
You
run
can do
that.
that.
You
Yeah.
could run that. Like that would be really good. I'm gonna say it like this: Eli Raridan, if healthy, again, big if. But Eli Raridan is a 6'6", 250 plus pound tight end that can run. And
Yeah.
Carter Nelson is a 6'4.5", 6'5", 220 plus pound tight end who can legitimately play wide receiver right now on the college level. He could play wide receiver. He 100% could. So it would be a great problem to have. Will it actually happen? Probably not. But it's fun, man. It's really, really fun. All right, let's go now. We'll go to Michael here next, I think. Yeah, let's go Michael. Michael says, in regard to the wide receiver room, 6 games in, what are your thoughts as far as depth? And does Notre Dame revisit possibly adding a 4th wide receiver in the 2024 class? Also, who are the top of the board guys for number 25? For 25 and numbers to take. So I'll hit 2025 and numbers to take at the end here, Sean. I just want to give you a little bit of open to like talking about the wide receiver position since we haven't had this conversation on the podcast.
Yeah.
I will say, would they be open to a 4th wide receiver? Maybe if the right one came a knocking, right? If they had an opportunity to, but I think they would be okay with 3. Who knows what happens as far as like who becomes interested at some point. But your thoughts so far, Sean, on the depth and I guess play of the Notre Dame wide receivers so far.
I think it would depend upon possible defections from the program after the season at the position, which it's a couple of names that come to mind that possibly could look to move on via the transfer portal. So maybe in that stead, I mean, they went and got a wide receiver from the transfer portal this year, which was, in my opinion, was more about leadership. And maybe if you got production and that fell through because of injury, but I don't look. A lot of people were down on the wide receiver group because of injuries last week against Duke, and like a lot of people are like, "Where's Braylon James?" And you know the coolest thing that I've seen happen, double R, college coaches being honest, coming before the fan base and telling the fan base that kids aren't ready. Like if Braylon James isn't ready, he isn't ready. Marcus Freeman said he's close, but he's not ready, you know? And we pretty much knew, you and I doing these
Mhm.
shows, pretty much knew like Jaden was your guy
Yeah.
and Rico was my guy. Because
Sure. Yeah.
Rico's senior film was a whole nother level
It was really
than
good.
his junior film. And then when I got a chance to watch Rico in the spring, I was like, oh yeah, he'll be on the field. You know, so when you get two kids, two confident kids,
Yes.
Jaden and Rico are really confident kids. Like
Yes, they are.
they came in expecting to play, right? Kenny
And
Minchie
they
is a
are.
confident kid. Like people around the program would tell you, they have to pull the reins on Kenny Minchie. Like Kenny Minchie knows I can throw the rock. I can throw that rock. You don't
Mhm.
have to. He knows he can throw the rock. So Notre Dame is really blessed to get confident kids in. Braylon James might not be that kid. I think Tobias Merriweather is struggling a little bit with confidence.
Sure.
So the makeup of kids, they might have talent, but the makeup of kids uh, is why you get different outputs from that
Yep.
particular room. Um, Lorenzo Styles, he leaves. Like I said, you might get another transfer. So if you can go and get a kid to come in that can be productive,
Mhm.
by all means do that. But from a
Yep.
depth standpoint, when you get Tobias, Braylon James, Jaden Greathouse, uh, Rico, what's the other kid's name that flipped from Texas Tech? Um,
Oh, Caleb Smith.
Caleb Smith.
Yeah.
The other Caleb Smith is the one that
KK.
transferred.
KK
Yeah,
Smith. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And and then Cam Williams come. Cam Williams is a confident kid. Like you don't have to
Yes.
worry.
Yes.
Cam Williams is coming in
Yeah.
ready to play and make a difference. So the wide receiver room, they're going to have a lot of confident kids next year, either by development or just having guys that are ready to play. So if they want to go get a veteran receiver, possibly, or they lose someone via the transfer portal, it'll be a luxury, in my opinion.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I'm getting excited because what you just said about that, the possibility of that tight end room next year and what's going to be in the wide receiver room, now I start to question, heck, do we trust a true sophomore to drive that? Because that's
Yeah.
almost like a sports car in a sense, offensively. Like, now do you go to the portal for a quarterback? It's like,
It's a good problem to have, though, isn't it? Like it's a
oh
really
heck
good
yeah.
problem to
I
have.
don't think I don't think Chancey Stuckey is losing sleep at all.
Yeah. Oh
I
no,
think
no,
I
not
think
not
he
with the
feels pretty
talents.
good. Yeah.
And I will say this too, Sean, is that I've not given up on Tobias Merriweather. I haven't given up on Dean Colsey. I haven't given up on those guys. But if they don't find their confidence the rest of this season, or at least this offseason, they got to fend off some guys, man. Because like you said, Cam Williams is coming in
Mm-hmm.
to play. He's not coming in to just be like, all right, I'm going to learn for a year and then figure it out. Like Cam Williams is coming in to play. Jaden Greathouse came in to play. Rico
Mm-hmm.
Flores came in to play. Caleb Smith will be back from injury. after this year as well. You also have Logan Saldate. Micah Gilbert is going to come in to play. That kid is not going to come in to be like, I don't really feel like playing this year. I'm going to figure it out. No, those kids are going to come to play. So if a couple of the older guys don't figure it out, man, they might be in threat of being passed over. I mean, like that's a possibility that happens.
This is the craziest thing. You know the craziest thing? You know the one wide receiver that has no problem getting open? It's Tobias.
Oh, yeah. He gets open all the time.
Dude, he gets open. Dude, I line up your best defensive back. He's going to run past him.
Yes.
He's going to run by him. Like, he's proven it. Game after game. It is literally, and I wonder what you think about this, because Malik picked this up and explained it earlier in the week. He said, you can tell really what's going on with Tobias on the crossing route. He said, forget the other stuff, the offensive pass interference and the drop ball on the first deep pass. He said, when you run that crossing route and you throw your hands up as late and lazy as he did, he's not expecting to get the ball. So he's not even running that route with purpose. He said that tells you where his mind is mentally. And he was like, yo, he's either dealing with a confidence issue or there's some disconnect between him and quarterback. Because there's no reason not to run that route on third down and to be looking for the ball. He said, but the way he went after it, you could tell he wasn't expecting that ball. It was almost like he was just going through the motions. And I was like, yo, he was like, it could be his confidence or it's something where he's not just locked in and focused. And it's really affecting his production. So
he has a mental block right now, man. And he's
only
a sophomore.
Don't get down on him.
No.
Man, send him some love.
You got to push him. Yeah, you got to pick him up sometimes, man. You got to pick him up. Because I know Lorenzo's Styles crumbled under it, right? And he never came back. But who's to say Tobias can't come back? Who's to say he can't? You don't. Many of us don't know him personally. They don't know what makes him tick. Maybe he can get past this tough spot in his career and get off to the other side. Who knows? But we'll see. We'll see. I'm hoping for the best for him though, because Sean, I think you make a great point that you don't have to get open. You don't have to scheme open Tobias Merriweather. He'll get open. He's always open. It's just about the little things, man, and playing with confidence. He needs to play with confidence. He really does. So we'll see.
Like, hopefully it clicks. Like, hopefully he realizes, like, oh, I'm a dude. Like, they can't stick me.
I hope so, man. I hope so. We had Brandon Plensner with another question. Sean, he said, it'll pop up. Do you think Notre Dame made an error in taking the 2025 running backs so early when you now have guys like James Simon visiting for a game? Or is it not too big of a deal because you got two dudes in 2024? Simon is a dude, though. I would agree that Simon is a dude. I like Simon a lot. James Simon, who is visiting for the USC game, which is why this question is coming up. Brandon, it's a tough question. I think the fact that you got Keidron Young and Aeneas Williams in 2024, it makes it a little more. It's okay to take guys that kind of have a specialized traits, like a James Thurman, for instance. That's just a very fast player that maybe is not a well-rounded player right now. I think that can be a thing. But ultimately, if you ask me, would I have waited a little bit for running back recruiting? I think I would have. Yeah, I think I would have. Just because, I mean, we're in the early portion of October right now, right? Like, there's still a lot of things that get figured out. I mean, we're talking about a 2025 class. These kids are high school juniors right now. You don't have to have everything figured out, right? James Thurman, I love the speed, but he was a player that, like, you needed to see a junior year bump as far as, like, his level of play. He hadn't been a full-time starter yet. Daniel Anderson now was also a part-time player last year. He actually had really good film, though, but now he's, he has a foot injury. I'm not mad at Notre Dame for taking either one of those players individually, but would I have waited a little bit for running back recruiting? Yeah, I think I would have personally. Again, it's Notre Dame's decision, and I have all the trust in Dylan McCullough. I really do. If there's Sean, I mean, what are the coaches on staff that you're like, anything they do recruiting, like, okay, I'm gonna let that play out because I kind of trust them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
who is it? Mike Mickens, Dylan McCullough, and maybe Chancey Stuckey you throw in there of like, okay, I'll trust you on that, right? I'll trust you. And Dylan McCullough took 2 running backs that he likes. So they might end up being very good. But if you're asking me personally, Brandon, from my perspective, I would have waited a little bit. Sean, I don't know if you agree with that, disagree, but like I think I would have waited on running back a little bit, just a
I
little bit.
mean, I would lean towards that, but once again, kind of with the conversation about defensive back, I'm not about to sit here and question Dylan McCullough, man.
Exactly.
I'm I'm not, because the way he wants to put his room together, he's looking at different types of what might be leaving the running back room and what he's willing to get, and he might be willing to say, um, "Yo, Dylan McCullough has been like the most honest coach." Dylan
Very honest,
McCullough is
yeah.
the type that would tell a kid, "You know what? I know we offered you, but
Not right now. Yeah.
yeah, we kind of like this other kid. Because
Yeah.
he's done it.
He
He's
has done
done
it,
it.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just don't question the way he views, the way he wants to put his room together with the different types of running backs. And I think the Simon kid is definitely a dude, but he's in play. He's in play. And that's interesting, man, because the running back position, because they got Aeneas early, right? And then for some reason, Aeneas kind of dropped, because when Aeneas initially signed with Notre Dame, Aeneas was like maybe top 50 or something like that. And then, of course, after he commits to Notre Dame, he starts to drop in the ratings. And then Keidron Young was a guy that I would say, I don't think they got on him late, but it was kind of like he was in the mix with some other guys at the running back position. Matter of fact, they were really, really, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Double R,
Yep.
Notre Dame, they were in conversations with Darian Dupree. Darian Dupree had been to the junior day
Yes.
and had formed a relationship with Dylan McCullough.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, they saw Keidron Young, and all of a sudden, the communication with Darian Dupree just like,
That happened with a few running backs. Once they felt like they were in a good
yeah,
spot with Keidron Young, it was just like that
yeah,
was our guy as the second running back, and it was through no fault of like Darian Dupree's a good football player. There was several running backs I was like, if they ended up with Notre Dame, I would have been very happy with that. But it was just Keidron Young was their
it is
guy.
what
Like
it
it was just their
is,
guy. Yeah. Yeah.
And Wisconsin gets a good running back. It
Yeah.
is
Very good
what it
running back.
is. It's a position where, like I said, when you going away for a second, I remember they jumped and they got Aeneas real early,
Yep.
and all of a sudden, Aeneas goes from like being the number one all-purpose back in the nation. All of a sudden, he's dropping, and it's like, of course he drops because he's committed to Notre Dame. It's like, okay, like whatever, but
Like his play on the field has gotten any worse. You know, Aeneas just scores 121st career touchdown. Like, dude's still balling, man. He isn't like
yeah,
I hate that kind of stuff. I hate it so much. But
but
yeah,
I think with with the running back position, it's like just really be cool with it. I would
yes,
if Estime
yep,
just playing advocate. I won't say
yep.
the devil's advocate, but just playing advocate. If Estime does leave after 3 years, which as a running back, I would
You would do.
advise
I would
all
advise as
college
well.
running backs to do.
Yes.
The only question in the makeup of the room would be probably who's the power back. Off the top of my head, that would be the question. Okay, who's the power back? But
Yeah.
heck, the way 12 runs in between the tackle, I mean, inside, I'm like, that might not be a question, right?
Yep.
You got Jabron Payne coming back, and then you got these two kids coming in, and then it is really something we talked about. Running back won't be a problem, or offensive line won't be a problem with depth. Tight end won't be a
Yes.
problem with depth. Quarterback moving forward won't be a problem with depth. Um, Offensively, wide receiver shouldn't be a problem with depth moving forward. Offensively,
Oh, they're gonna have a
Notre
lot of
Dame,
receivers.
we should see Notre Dame really transitioning into a truly high-powered offense that's going to put up 40 points. 40
Don't
points again.
disagree. Don't disagree. Sean, I was talking to someone about this morning actually, because I would also assume that Audric Estime would leave for the NFL draft, and I do consulting for the NFL draft space, and if he ever wanted my opinion on it, I would tell him, Audric,
Get out of here.
I love you, man. I love Notre Dame football. You're a great player. Go to the NFL, sir. Go right now to the NFL. That would 100% be my advisement for him, right? But next year, the running back room is going to be this, even potentially without Audric Estime. Jeremiah Love, who is as good as we thought he was going to be, Sean. Absolute stud, Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love, Payne Price. Ford can come back for another year, right? If he wants to. I don't know if he would, but I think he can. Yeah. And then you're going to have Keedron Young and Aeneas Williams come in. Dude, what? Like, what? All right. It's insane, man. It's absolutely insane. That would probably be the deepest running back room in college football, in my opinion.
And to be honest, that's just to think that Dylan Edwards was supposed to be on the roster too.
I'll say this, man. I've been watching Dylan Edwards over at Colorado because Notre Dame wanted him as a slot receiver, right? Like a gadget type player. I don't think long-term running back's going to be the spot for him, even though that's what they have him playing right now. My guy's 160-something pounds, Sean. Like, I don't know, man.
The thing, a weapon like him, it's just about getting him the ball in space.
I feel that. Yeah.
Right. He's not a pure. I mean, it's easy for him to play running back in high school.
In Kansas, too, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
College, no. If he can play running back, the Pac-12 would be the conference.
Well, unfortunately, they're going to the Big 12 now, so I guess that could still be the conference that it could work. But yeah, man. Because I will not lie though, Dylan Edwards in the slot for Notre Dame right now or in the future would be pretty dumb. It'd be a lot of speed, man. Man, yeah, and like Carmel Humphrey just said, like he could be like Deuce Vaughn. Deuce Vaughn's a lot thicker than what Dylan Edwards is, man. Like Dylan Edwards was 155 pounds when he committed to Notre Dame. Like Deuce Vaughn was still $175, almost 180 pounds while at Kansas State. So could he put on 20 pounds? Sure, he could, but I don't know. I don't love that comp personally. I think that he's more of he should be playing slots, and then you should be giving him jets and reverses. He should be like the Anthony Thomas was for Oregon. That's who I think he should be personally, but that's just my opinion. Great question though, Brandon. Did we hit all the? Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't even wait. We answered that question. Sorry, Brandon's got a lot of great questions today, so I was just mixing them up. And here was his other one that I was going to put up. That's what I was confused about. Brandon Plesser said, any idea of the level of interest from North Carolina products Bryce Young and Jordan Young? Bryce Davis and Jordan Young, excuse me. Are they going to make a game day visit? Don't know about the game day visit, Brandon. As of right now, both players do not have anything finalized. I can say that for sure. Jordan Young, I think, has a level of interest. It's just kind of faded over the last few months a little bit, but I think Notre Dame can get back in that one. It's just about getting him to campus. So hopefully we're going to USC or Pitt or Wake Forest, one of these home games. Like, you got to get him on campus again. Bryce Davis says all the right things, about Notre Dame and everything. He's never taken a visit. So I don't have much hope on that one right now, but there's a little bit of a Jordan Young. It's just about getting back to campus, man. You got to get him back. Sean, this is an interesting conversation right here. Call Me Ty says, chances Notre Dame takes a transfer this offseason at these positions, in your opinion. So let's go through these one-on-one. Chances that they take this position in the transfer portal. Long time away from this. We don't even know what the roster is going to look like in the offseason, but we'll do our best here. Quarterback.
A percentage? What do you want to put a percentage on it?
Yeah, I mean, we could do a percentage. I just think, like, for me, Sean, it's I mean, just simply a yes or no could even suffice, honestly, because like quarterback for me, it's so dependent on how Notre Dame feels about Kenny Minchie, Steve Angeli, and their opinion of what CJ Carr could do early on. So it's really about just from a coaching perspective of like sitting down in the room and saying, we feel comfortable with Kenny Minchie as a redshirt freshman starting. We feel comfortable about Steve Angeli. I don't know 100% of what the staff feels about those kids moving forward. You know what I mean? So I feel like if they're comfortable with them and Gino's happy with where they're projecting, then I don't think you need to necessarily take a transfer. But if you're not comfortable, then that completely changes that scenario. You know what I mean? So just tough for me.
I'll go a little bit further out on the limb than you did. Based upon what we believe will be on the roster from a skill position standpoint, I don't know if you want to give those keys to a red shirt freshman, unless Kenny Minchie is just absolutely incredible. Like, confidence is not Kenny Minchie's problem. That's not his problem. So it's a good possibility that Kenny Minchie could be ready to roll, especially since Gino Gaduli is there. They have a quarterback coach that is working with them, and it's not Tommy Rees trying to do two jobs. So that's vitally important to keep in mind. That has not been there for those quarterbacks. Steve Angeli, to me, would be a really tough veteran quarterback that you could start the season with and feel like you could win until Kenny is ready, if that makes sense. But if I'm not mistaken, you start on the road at Texas A&M next year. Is that the first game? I think the first game is at Texas A&M, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know if you want to go into that game. I'll give you a scenario. Mike Elko takes the Michigan State job. Do you go after Riley Leonard?
Yeah, I mean, yes. Yes. Yeah.
That answered the question. I gave you a scenario, so yes.
I wouldn't even think about it. The answer would be yes, right? Because
there you go.
Because Sean, nothing ever works out the way you exactly want it to work out, right? It never does.
Yeah.
So I am in the fortune of putting as many great options on the table as possible and letting it figure itself out. That's where I am, right? I mean, yeah. I would say, because I know people are talking about this, and it's been a question on the board. Somebody posted about this on the board also the other day. I think it's more likely Riley Leonard goes to the NFL than even comes back to college as of right now. But if he does go back to school, there is an interesting question of, because I think Sean, when I watched Riley Leonard against Notre Dame, I was like, dang, man, he has no wide receivers. Yeah.
He has no wide receivers, but he was also confused.
He was a little confused. Yeah. Yeah. Al Golden did a great job against him.
He did a great job.
Yeah. But I also watched that wide receivers and I'm like, those guys aren't getting much separation at all. They're not really getting open. I kind of would be curious what Riley Leonard would look like at Notre Dame. Yeah. And
you're the draft guy.
Yep.
Let's see, he's out 2 weeks. They have a bye week, and then they face North Carolina State on the road, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
If he is battling, because this could be, I don't think he's 100% 2 weeks. Not the way that ankle.
I would be very surprised if he's ready in 2 weeks. Even though it's a high ankle sprain, I would be very surprised. Yeah.
So with them having aspirations to win the ACC and knowing him, if he tries to tough it out the rest of the year in that ankle, he's probably not going to put forth the best tape. So now, would that impact his decision to go or come back? If he battles the ankle injury all year, the evaluation he gets back, does he want to come back, be better, improve his stock? All of that plays into this, because he can twist that ankle again and re-aggravate it, and then the next thing you know, So, but we don't know who's going to pop in the portal. So
We
I
have no
guess that
idea.
would be the biggest question,
Yes.
But I gave you one name and you said yes pretty quickly. So
Yeah, I mean, my answer would be yes. I know a lot of people in the chat are fighting back against that, but like, I'll take Riley Leonard's talent all day. I understand that you guys like Kenny Minchie. I like Kenny Minchie a lot too, but I'll still like Kenny Minchie as a redshirt sophomore after a year of Riley Leonard. I would still really like him then, and I would still like a CJ Carr as a redshirt freshman after a. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Wide receiver, Sean. I don't think they need to go to the portal for wide receiver. I think they'll have enough depth at that position.
no,
I don't see that.
no,
Linebacker, no, not for
no.
me. Safety, yes. I would say yes for safety.
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
yes.
unfortunately, that's a good way to put it. Edge, I would say no right now. I think they'll be okay at edge.
They look. There are so many promising guys on that defensive line that are young, especially at Viper and Notre Dame has some talent, man.
They do.
Like, look, just talk from people around the program,
Yes.
like Devin Houston and Brendan Vernon. They're not getting reps, but they're see. This is what I love.
Yep.
Brendan Vernon's a confident kid.
Yes, he is. Yes, he
Like,
is.
they have Notre Dame, the youngsters they have some confident dudes in that 23 class. Like Osbury and Drake Bowen, those dudes are confident and they're instinctive. Like, I can't wait. I think next year would be the disillusion of missed tackle for losses in the backfield for the linebacker position at Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Because we suffered watching that for the past 2 years way too much.
Yes. Yes, we
I
have.
think it gets a lot better next year. I anticipate.
Sean, it's like, and I don't know how good the linebackers will be that are in the room. I think their talent is extremely high, so I think they're going to be good football players. But for me, it would be like if I'm going to say this, and I'm going to try to make this as respectful as I possibly can because I don't mean it as disrespect. I just think it could come off disrespectful if I say it a certain way. Drake Bowen, JT Bertrand, Jack Kaiser, Maris Loifau, the starting three linebackers for Notre Dame right now. If they went from that to Drake Bowen, Nolan Ziegler, Jaden Osbury, Jalen Sneed, that would be like if they took the super serum from Captain America. That would be like that. Because that would just be like, because this is all due respect. I think JD Bertrand's a good football player, right? But JD standing next to Drake Bowen is a completely different look. All due respect to JD Bertrand. All due respect, it's a different look compared to one another. They look different. I'm not even talking about the moving different stuff that we always talk about, right? I'm talking about just the look difference. I mean, Drake Bowen, as a true freshman, is 6'2", 230 something pounds already. Like, that guy looks like he's ready to play, even though he isn't yet. You know what I mean? Like, some guys just look different. Again, that doesn't mean better, it doesn't mean worse, doesn't mean any of that stuff, right? Because it's the same thing on the defensive line. It's the same thing. Like, you just talked about Brendan Vernon, right? If you go from, let's just say in hypothetical, Javonte Jean-Baptiste is your starting strong side defensive end this year, and then next year you go to Brendan Vernon. Again, not saying that he'll be better than Javonte Jean-Baptiste, because I think that's very unrealistic for a redshirt freshman compared to a 6-year senior. But it would look different, right? Like, it would look a whole lot different physically. It would just look different. That's just kind of my point. Like, these guys, Notre Dame has taken a lot of traitsy players over the last couple cycles, man. Like, guys that look the part. Have you seen Armel Mukum lately, man? Like,
that was
what
the name.
the
That was the
heck,
name
dude?
I was going to throw out. That's the name I was going to throw out. And
yeah, man.
you still, Jason Anye is like, yo, the young talent.
Yeah.
Something else that I could sit here and talk about these youngsters all day. I don't think you understand I don't know if they purposely did this, but they played Drake and Jaden together
Yep.
a lot in Good on Good. I mean, a lot. And
Yep.
I'm like, yo, and the way, just the instincts. I'm telling you, man, it's a difference between kids just being football players, going back to when we were talking about Bodie,
Yeah.
and kids playing a position.
Right.
The way Jaden and Drake would see stuff pre-snap and immediately attack downhill. It was like, wait a minute, because we don't see this in Notre Dame. Like, usually the linebackers have to be activated. Like, you crash into this gap, they would literally see the gap, slither through the gap because they know how to get through the gap,
Right.
and then finish the play. And I would be sitting there like, if our freshmen can do this, what the heck are we doing? And Al Golden 2 weeks ago said Drake is like, dude, knows everything. Like, he knows the book, he knows the plays, he knows the checks. Or I'm saying to myself, then what's the issue? If you're telling me one of his strengths is he knows how to get everybody lined up and he knows what everybody else is supposed to do.
Yep.
What's the problem? Because I think it was right before, leading up to the Ohio State game. He was like, yo, Drake is close. He was like, yeah, I trust him. Like, Drake is close. I'm sitting here like, well, all right. All right. That's a man. Look, I don't know if that's a trait that Marcus Freeman and his staff, offensively and defensively, have gone after. But they have really gotten some confident players in that 23 class.
Yeah.
Like, that 23 class didn't come in like, oh, we're about to hold back. And, no, they all of those kids, the majority of those kids believe they can play
100%. Yeah.
and want to play.
They do believe it. Very, very confident group, isn't it? It's a very, very confident group. Yeah. Yep. I would agree. But we're on the same page. But like edge, I don't think they have to. I mean, I think you can make the case of like, if a dude's there that wants to come Notre Dame, like, okay, cool.
Give me another Jared Verse coming. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. If Jared Verse wants to come, like, yeah, come on over, Jared. Yeah, sure.
You get a type like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's funny. We were talking about the quarterback position, Sean. I want to bang this one out real quick. We only have a few more left and we're going to get out of here. We had T Smith 0323 said, would you take DJ Uiagalelei from Oregon State if he enters again? Absolutely not.
Not. But that's funny. I have something to do. I would say this, but it's funny because DJ, they do kind of like a platoon. Like, he's the guy at Oregon State. He plays like 3 series, but they get their freshmen in. Like Aiden Childs in every 4th series, and that kid, he can play. He can play.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at this. You just never know. Like, it's really going to, because I said this, and a lot of Notre Dame fans were honest enough to agree.
Yep.
If Shedeur Sanders had jumped into the transfer portal, which he did, but if he had decided he was coming to Notre Dame and Notre Dame took him, most Notre Dame fans would have lost their mind.
At the time. Yeah. Now they wouldn't. But
they would have lost their mind.
Yep.
Okay. After watching them now, they would have been like, oh, yeah, I'll take them. But at the time, coming out of Jackson State, they would have lost their minds. Right? Because you didn't watch them. Of course, I'd have been like, oh, okay. Cool. But it's one of those things, man. You don't know what's coming into the portal unless you have really dug in deep on the kids that are in the portal, or you have a previous relationship, which happens a lot in the portal. Like, a staff has recruited this person and they know what they have. That's what makes everything different. So DJ would be a really fast no.
Yeah. Because for me, Sean, it's like I would only take, because there's two types of quarterbacks that I would potentially take. One is if there was a extreme talent in the portal, right? You mentioned Riley Leonard. If Cameron Ward from Washington State went to hop in the portal too, I'd be like, heck to the yeah, come on over. But the other way is just a sound veteran quarterback that's there for depth. And I don't think DJ fits that bill, though. I don't think DJ Uyunglele would come to Notre Dame to be a backup quarterback, right? Like, that's not what he's coming to do. He would come to want to be the starting quarterback for the University of Notre Dame, and I'm not going there with DJ.
Yeah,
DJ's doing okay at Oregon State. He's doing fine, but like he's not that guy in my opinion.
He doesn't want to be Spencer Sanders at Ole Miss.
Oh man, that was a weird one too. Spencer Sanders was a weird one.
the stat, where that Oklahoma State program is, I totally understand him.
Yeah, it's a mess. Do you know who their quarterback is? You know who their quarterback is?
Oklahoma State?
Yeah.
No, who?
Alan Bowman. Remember him? Was at Texas Tech. Then he spent a year at He spent a year at Michigan or 2 years at Michigan. Yeah. And now he's the starting quarterback at Oklahoma State.
Wow. Yeah. Congratulations to Tez Walker, man. The NCAA finally made some sense.
Finally. The North Carolina team might be scary down the stretch, man, because that's the wide receiver they need right there. So
yeah, you're right.
He's good, man. He's a really good player. Kent State had some dudes at receiver last year, man. They had him and then the Cephas State. Like, what? All right. All right. In the MAC. All right. Oh, man. We had another question here from Bobby S. who said, not based on stats, more based on college potential. What commits have improved the most on film and you think will now be college standouts? College standouts. So I don't know if I would go with college standouts. I would just say like who's had the most improvement from a senior perspective for me. Sean, like I would say Micah Gilbert has had a big boost as a senior for a wide receiver. I think he was really good. I think he was good to really good throughout his first 3 years. I think he's been excellent as a senior. He's had a big boost in my opinion.
Yeah.
Offensive line wise, I think Styles Prescott has had a nice boost so far. I think both defensive ends, Bryce Young and Logan Thomas, have had big boosts, and Bodie Cahoon would be the other guy, I would say. Tavon Benny-Powell as well has been boost, but like I wouldn't say college standout. I would just say he now looks like he belongs at Notre Dame, in my opinion. I wasn't sure that he did when he committed to the University of Notre Dame. So those are the guys. I think for the question, though, who improved the most to now a college standout? Bryce Young's my answer. That's my answer. I saw it with Bryce Young a little bit, but like I wasn't sold on Bryce Young. Bryce Young as a senior looks like he could be an absolute dude at Notre Dame. So he's my pick.
I agree. Look, we talked about Bodie, talked about Bryce Young. Dude, look, let me tell you something. Cam Williams is up here doing what the heck he wants to do.
But he was already that guy, man.
No. It's worse now because he's doing it on both sides of the football now. Double. He's literally doing whatever, and his team was probably like a good competitive program.
Sure,
they're not one of the powers in Illinois, but they're good competitive program, solid program. Man, I told him, I reached out and just told him, man, like, stop, man.
Stop. Don't be so disrespectful, okay?
Like those kids have parents in the stands, man. Just stop.
Oh gosh. No, man, he went from Sean, I thought he was a top 50 player as a junior. I think he's a legit 5-star top 15 to 20 player in the 2024 class. Like he's that dude, man. He's if Cam Williams isn't starting at some point as a true freshman, I would be shocked. I'd be shocked. He's that good in my opinion. Like he is. Yeah, he's that guy.
This is the crazy thing. You remember when the original trio locked in?
He was the lowest ranked one.
He was thought of as the third dude.
Yeah.
It was CJ and Jack Larson.
And then Cam Williams.
Excited. And it was like, and Cam Williams.
Yeah, I cannot lie though, Sean. I remember seeing his sophomore film and I was like, he's good. I don't know if he'd be quite a take for me right now, though. And then it's like junior year, boom, and then senior year, whoa.
But you know what happened?
Yeah.
He literally, and this is very rare because he has been like him, CJ, and Jack have been locked in.
Yes.
And that's really rare. Cam, Notre Dame really beat. It was Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois. Like the schools really had not had an opportunity to jump on Cam. Like the SEC didn't have an opportunity to really jump on him.
Yeah,
You
got him
know,
early.
they got Notre Dame got him early, and he
Yep.
just eventually blossomed into a dude. And that's rare because usually kids will open up their recruiting
Mm-hmm.
once other schools, because I'm sure schools started calling, but Cam was
Sure.
like, Cam was like, I'm done. I'm done. And that's really rare with that trio, because that trio has pretty much been like that.
Yeah, man. They've stuck together throughout the entire process. And Jack Larson quietly just continues to be a good player that no one talks about, which is pretty hysterical, but that's another conversation for another day.
This cat Jack Larson can rush the passer, double R.
Oh, I haven't seen that. He can rush. He's rushing the passer.
Their games?
No,
Yeah.
I haven't seen him on defense. No, I have not seen him on defense. That's
okay,
funny.
the school that has Jaden Davis, is that Jaden Davis, the quarterback that's going to Michigan?
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
They played.
Yeah.
I think he had 2 sacks that game.
Really?
Defensive end. Yeah.
That's. I need to.
I was like, wait a minute, because I remember I mentioned it to B. Driss, and he said he saw.
That's Providence Day, right? Providence Day. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, wait a minute, because we said the same thing about Cooper Flanagan last year. Like,
Cooper Flanagan could play defensive end at Notre Dame, like no doubt in my mind, 0 doubt. He's only 260 pounds, Sean. He's just like, all right, all right. Oh man, all right. Let's get through the last couple, man. But yeah, I mean, Jack's just good, man. Best hands in the class too. Just best hands, dude. He's got great hands. Catches everything. We had a couple quick ones from Bobby S. Work through these real fast. Bobby S says Kennedy Urlacher is probably the least talked about and least amount of senior buzz. Any thoughts on his senior film and what does he bring to the table? Bobby, I don't have any thoughts right now. I've only seen a couple clips of him. There isn't a lot of senior film available of Kennedy Urlacher. His interception that he had the one game was pretty nice, but I just don't have a lot of thoughts. I've heard he's been looking much more explosive this offseason, though. So we'll see when the senior film finally comes out. We had a question here from Dan V, who says, "What's up with Rowan Byrne? He was super hot on Notre Dame and doesn't hear much, and don't hear much anymore. You don't hear much because he's supposed to come from the Ohio State game, decided not to come. He went to the Penn State game instead, which was kind of odd. And he was originally trying to come back for the Pitt game, but he is going to a different school for that one as well. So I don't think Rowan Byrne's going to be back at Notre Dame for the season. So it was just a little bit of a weird situation, you know? So I just saw an interview he did with Tom Lemming where he mentioned Notre Dame as one of his top schools. So maybe he just wants to see other places, but he did cancel his visit to Notre Dame this season, which is a little troubling. But
once again, offensive line is one of those positions where, hey, if you lose a dude, you're like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, because you're not worried. You're not worried. It is kind of strange, though, because the math is not mathing. Like, he's saying one thing, but his actions are not lining up with that.
Yeah.
Do you realize how spoiled we've been as Notre Dame fans with offensive line?
Offensive linemen? Yeah.
Like, you for a different reason. Mm-hmm. Both of us watch, like, we're the type of dudes. I clicked over from the Bears last night and watched some of the Western Kentucky games.
Yeah, same.
I'm that weird. It's college football. Like, I'll watch at least 15 games in a weekend. Yeah. It's just crazy.
Yep.
Offensive line play is really bad. I don't know if people know that. In college football.
Offensive line in college football is very bad. Offensive line
play. Very bad.
Yep.
And I try to tell Notre Dame fans, like, we have been spoiled.
Yes, we have.
Fan base.
You're not wrong. I mean, there's like, what, Notre Dame, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia's got a pretty good offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Oregon State's got a good offensive line.
Georgia fans are complaining because they're like 1 yard less on their per carry average this year than they were last year. And they're like, oh my God, what's wrong with the offensive line? I'm like, are you kidding me?
Oh gosh. The rich don't like being poor sometimes,
No, they
Sean.
do
It's
not
so
like
funny,
being
man.
poor. I try to encourage Notre Dame fans, like, please don't nitpick so much when it comes to offensive line. Like,
Yeah,
if you go and watch the rest of college football and offensive line play,
it's not
you
great.
would, man, you would understand. Like, you know what? Let me be
Yeah.
thankful.
Yep. John Longass said, "Can I get a brief rundown of why we didn't get Jamion Franklin? Notre Dame did have Jamion Franklin for a couple years, and then he transferred to Duke.
Then he
So
transferred, right?
yeah, Notre Dame did have Jamion Franklin. So yeah,
I would too.
yeah.
You know what I'm mad about though?
What's that?
If we could, because Jacob Lacey is playing really good ball for Oklahoma.
No surprise. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I'm like, yo, if we could have kept both him and Howard Cross. And I'm like, yo, this defensive line would have been even better.
Yeah, it would be.
But they play the same position. And I guess I don't know if Howard was taking, I think Howard was taking his snaps, taking more snaps from him. And hey, it just stinks, man. It stinks when you
Oh,
see guys like Jamion Frank and Jacob Lacey at other schools playing really well.
yeah. Howard Cross has made up for it though, man. That dude is
Oh,
ballin'.
where do you have him at? You have him about third, fourth round right now?
I'm not even sure yet, man. I need to grade him. I mean, he didn't have any buzz coming into the year. I don't even think Blesto had him with a grade. Like no one even graded him as a scout coming into the year. So
You think he
I don't know,
makes it to
man.
the Senior Bowl week?
I mean, Jim Nagy, the director of the Senior Bowl, keeps tweeting about him, so that's a good
Yeah,
indicator, right?
yeah,
So we'll
yeah,
see. We'll see.
yeah.
I hope so. I'm really worried about Howard that he's going to go to the combine potentially, and I have a bad feeling he's going to go to the combine. He's going to be like 5'11" and 7/8 and like 280 pounds, and you're going to be like, ooh, it's not great size. It's not great size, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
yeah,
We'll see.
yeah.
I just have a bad feeling that he's even smaller than we think, and like that's
I
it's gonna be
pull
tough.
for I pull for a kid like that.
Yeah.
I
Hey man,
really
he's got
do.
NFL bloodlines. He plays his butt off. Like there's a
Yeah,
lot of good. There's a lot of good there, but we shall
yeah.
see. Couple last questions here. Carmel Humphrey had a question. Said Talon Taylor and Dalen McCutcheon seem to have very similar skill sets. If you could take one, which would be? Kid from Chicago would be great, but staying hot in Texas would be two thoughts. I would take, if I could only have one, Talon Taylor would be my pick because I actually think they're a little bit different. I think Dalen McCutcheon actually is incredibly nuanced, really good route runner, explosive. But I think Talon Taylor's got an extra gear. I think he's got a little bit more speed that he brings to the table. So I would personally go with Talon Taylor, although Dalen McCutcheon's also very good. So I would not be mad if Notre Dame got Dalen McCutcheon.
Yes, I would take Cam Williams. I would take Talon Taylor, and I will come right back in the 26th season and
Uh-oh.
take Andre um, Brown Jr. out of Chicago. The
Staying in
name,
Chicago, baby.
the
Yeah.
name is about to pop on
Wow.
26 class.
Is he tall?
He's is he tall?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
His dad played for the U.
Okay.
Caught the last touchdown, the game time touchdown in the 88 game,
Oh, did he?
but then they went for the two and ended up
Mm-hmm.
losing. He caught that touchdown that brought it to within one. His kid goes to Maris, and
Mm.
he's lighting it up as a sophomore.
How did he end up in Chicago?
Well, his dad's from Chicago. You know,
Oh, that's
Andre
from
Brown.
Chicago.
Yeah, his
Got
dad's
it.
from
Got
Chicago. Andre Brown. Andre Brown is 6'4". His son is taller than him as a sophomore.
it. That's
So yeah,
wild.
he's like
Fantastic.
6'5" with humongous hands right now. They wouldn't let him play. The school and the high school coach does not believe in freshmen playing varsity.
Wow.
So that's the only reason he didn't play varsity last year. He's
Mhm.
caught 3 game-winning touchdowns already as a
It's pretty good.
sophomore. So
It's pretty good.
he look, it's I tell people all the time, like, dude, he's one of the top 5 wide receivers in the state. Like, I don't care what class. He's just flat out one of the top 5 receivers in the state. So Notre Dame should come back to Chicago 3 years in a row for a wide receiver.
I love it. And
3
actually,
years
Sean, I
in a
think that was
row.
our last. That was our last question. So I think it's a great note to wrap us up on Notre Dame Recruiting Hour here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. I want to thank everybody so much for joining myself, Ryan Roberts, Mr. Sean Davis, co-host of the Lucky Lovely Podcast here today. Before you leave, if you could just do us a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the podcast, hit that notification bell. Boards at irishbreakdown.com for your latest team and recruiting intel. We will be back tomorrow after the Notre Dame versus Louisville contest for a post-game show. Go Irish. Thank you all so much again for joining us today on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.